fourth. He was an Amen priesthood, coming out of his father, who was Amenhotep III. And Amenhotep III and his wife, Queen Tai, that's actually where they get Solomon and Sheba from. And then Akhenaten's son, King Tut, is the story of Jesus. Now, I know I said a lot right there. And I know if you had told me this when I was 9 years old, I would have had a heart attack. But when someone tells a perfect lie, the truth is unbelievable.
Say from the bottom of my heart, my friend's heart, we truly love you and we thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes,
I received that and I send that love right back.
Yes, sir.
You know, amongst us the people, we called it mer, M-E-R, mer. Mer is that kind of love that you have for someone, someplace, something where there are no words that could properly express. You know, when you say, I love you so much, words could never explain. Well, that's mer. And that's what we had as a people for each other. But first of all, we had that love for ourselves.
That's right.
Because it's only when you love yourself on that level that you could ever even imagine loving someone else like that. So that for so many people who have misplaced that love,
right,
that real love, that when they think they fell in love, they didn't fall in love, they fell, but it wasn't in love.
Yeah.
It was infatuation. And so that same love that we have is reciprocated. And it's the kind of love that I've had for our people all of my life. I've never known any other way. I was born into this. Right. I was born 2 years before Emmett Till was assassinated. And then out of that came a long string of experiences, from the civil rights movement to the Black Power movement, of which I played a part throughout in my own way as I was growing. I was a Panther Cub. I had a chance last week, 2 weeks ago, to go to Seattle. We did some work there. And there was a brother by the name of Elmer Dixon, who he and his brother Aaron Dixon were the originators of the Seattle branch of the Black Panther Party. And, there are some things on my Instagram page where there's interviews between Elmer and I. We call it Panther to Panther. Wow. But the thing is that I was a cub. You're not going to see me with guns in my hand. They wouldn't have allowed me to be able to do that. But I was in those Saturday classes. I was in those classes where they taught us Kiswahili and our culture, and to be proud and to be strong and to stand for what you believe in, and to understand fundamentally that the people who would wish to oppress you are doing it because they are insecure and suffer from a deep inferiority complex. And under those conditions, they are bullies. And every bully is a coward. That's something I never forgot. Every bully, when they're all up in your face and they're pulling out all these guns, the more guns they pull out, the more fear they have of you. Because if they was really all that, they wouldn't need nothing like that.
For sure.
And so this society is based on the fact that they want you to think that might is right. Okay? But it's not. Right is might. When you stand righteous in your belief system, as I've seen so many brothers and sisters do throughout my lifetime, just as all of y'all are doing in terms of just coming here. Another thing I always tell young people, just to understand more than anything else, is that the most precious thing you have, when all is said and done, is time. You can have all the money in the world, you can lose it and get more.
Right.
You can have 18 houses all burned down. You can build another one. But there'll never be another April 7th, 2024. So how you spent that day, you can never get back. So that's priceless. Don't waste your time. Spend it on things. Don't work when you play. Don't play when you work. Balance, ma'at. Enjoy life. Life was meant to be enjoyed. We're just in a situation where we have to go through this nonsense. But the Creator never brought us into this existence for us to have to live like this. Each and every one of us is the Creator having a human experience. So why would the Creator create us to put us here to have to go through all this nonsense? We're dealing with a people that are afraid. And they're very ignorant. But despite and in spite of all that, we pushed ahead. And for that, we should celebrate. The worse we've had it is the more reason for celebration. So instead of going down into the doldrums of sadness of having to go through this, rise up through it to understand, like Dr. Maya Angelou saying, still we rise. We got this. That's why they're doing all that they're doing. DEI, okay? Diversity, equality, and inclusion. It didn't work back then, and it don't work now. It was just a mask to allow people to be supremacists. Mm-hmm. In fact, I sort of kind of think that that's one of the best things that could. In fact, some good things have happened for us over the past, maybe since Trump came down that escalator in 2015. You know, can you imagine? Oh, you know, we was thinking everything was all right with President Obama.
Right.
Bless the brother, Michelle, and his children. Got nothing negative to say. They did the best they could with what they had. So I'm not going to argue that point right there. But it was a mask. It was a mask that made us think that it was getting better. Everything was all right. Okay, we're post-racist society now. And then here come a man in the corner, okay, who said in 1992 that if he could come back as anything, he'd come back as an intelligent black man. I saw him say it. I heard him say one time to a group of black folk, listen, you know you built America, right? I heard him say it. And he also said, yeah, y'all think everything's all right? I'm going to show you what's been hiding. So he pulled back that cover. And he has shown us. Everybody say, what's happening to our democracy? America has never been democratic. And has never been Christian. And that's the two things they claim. To be a Christian democratic state. They wouldn't know if they tripped over it. And here we are as black folk, watching this, experiencing this, understanding this. And then they ask us how we doing. And then all of a sudden now, 3 Milli Productions, Brother Caleb and Sister Sid and their team brings knowledge and wisdom. Brother Chase brings knowledge and wisdom. The ancestors, the voice of the ancestors. Brother King and his queen bring forward live water to give us the sustenance we need to live. And they say, no, we got to stop this. And so we're going to stop them from coming into our colleges. We're going to stop them from coming into our jobs. And even though we stole everything from them, we're going to make it. See, when you talk about DEI, they were the first people claim DEI. Because had we not diversified our culture, brought them in as equals, and included them in what we did, you know, I mean, if the original Americans had built a wall along the East Coast,
For sure.
had they developed a homeland security, these folk wouldn't be here. They wouldn't be in Australia. They wouldn't be anywhere in the world, except in Europe, which was dying out at the time that they had to get out on the waters. And so, I heard that Spelman has got record numbers of admissions because of DEI. When I went to Tuskegee University yesterday, I was asking them, do you have record numbers of people trying to get into Tuskegee since they want to keep you out? And you know something, that wouldn't be a bad idea. Do you know what would happen if all the great sports figures that would be playing for all these universities decided to go to Morehouse or to Morgan State or to Voorhees or to Tuskegee or to Clark Atlanta? You want to keep us out? Okay. You know what was funny about the vice presidential candidate, Nikki Haley, when she was running for presidency, she spoke a lot about racism. She ignored a lot about racism. But what a lot of people don't know is that when her parents came from India to here, Her father couldn't get a job. He was a biology professor, one of the best biology professors out on the circuit. But he couldn't work in a white university. It was a black university, Voorhees, that hired him. He worked for HBCU because he couldn't get a job. So when you hear even the ignorance of some people that are saying, well, I don't know it, you experienced it. You would not have what you have if it wasn't for black folk that brought you on as a professor of biology at Voorhees, or your mother who was a lawyer, could only handle colored cases, so to speak. This is us. We have saved them in so many different ways. But psychologically, if they get you thinking a certain way, then you'll accept anything. And see, my thing is to help people understand, own your greatness. Okay? Don't play no imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome, I watched the funeral of Whitney Houston a couple years back. And one of the speakers was Kevin Costner. And Kevin Costner told a story about Whitney Houston when he wanted her to play the part in The Bodyguard. And he was saying that she did not think she was worthy. She did not think that she was capable of playing that part and singing those songs. Have you heard I Will Always Love You? Who could have sang that any better? Who could have played that part any better? But what has happened to black folk in our minds is the imposter syndrome. That's why I don't use the word humble. Humble is not a good word.
We were just talking about this, Bobby.
Oh, were you
right
really?
here.
Good, okay.
All of us in the car.
Yes, yeah. Humble is not a good word. It's when you put yourself in a lesser position and put someone in a higher position, and that you give deference to them in that. And humility is the act of being humble. I am not humble. I don't have a bone, not a cell, not an atom in my body is humble. I own my greatness. Dr. Clark used to always tell me, I have never met a mind finer than mine, but I've had the honor of being in the presence of minds as fine as mine. And that's how I feel about us as a people. And I don't care if you that brother that was sitting on that stoop when I was coming in this building. You got a fine mind. Or the sister that was across the street. You are a miracle. If you black and alive in 2022, 2024, you're a miracle. Because you're not supposed to be here. The way they designed this project, we either was going to be on the plantation or we were going to be dead. That's right. Or insane, or back in Africa. But for us to have ownership of this, it was never meant to be this. So celebrate your life, family. And for your generation, understand all you gotta do is keep on keeping on. It's yours. You don't even have to take it. You got it. All you gotta do is live it live. That's what you gotta do. And I'm telling you from my perspective, looking back on my life, I just never gave up. You know, I come with a work ethic. You saw me when I come in, I'm ready to sit down, I'm ready to start talking. Okay, I come with a work ethic, no time to relax. When I go home, when I return to New York, yeah, I'll put my head back and rest. I know how to rest now. I know how to rest. And I know what brings joy to me in order for me to enjoy my life. I enjoy life. Because you know another thing, and then I'm going to stop on this point.
You good.
Is that our children, one of the things that our children are experiencing, I see, because I've been with them every day of my life throughout my entire career. I taught in South Central Bronx from 1979, October 79 until July of 2009. Every day of my life I was with children, Monday through Friday. Of course, my wife and I had our own children. So I've been around children. I've watched them grow up close and also within communities. And one of the things that children always say, well, there's two things that children say that I make a point of, is that they seem to see that, like, people who do this kind of work are not very happy. The way we talk is not very happy. We're always, I don't want to say angry, but we're always perturbed about certain things. And to children who are happy and go lucky and always looking for the hope, it becomes interesting because they say, well, why do I want to be like that? So as an African, I'm happy. And I want to show you why you should be happy and productive as an African. To demonstrate, to show by example why it's great to be an African. What is it about being an African? It's because I'm all that. And I'm happy to be all that. The other thing that children say to me, they say, well, Brother Kaba or Brother Booker T, why do I need to know this? You know, why do I need to go to the past? What's the past going to do for me? And I give an example. I took my grandson to a toy store, and I saw that they had a Nerf, and they had a slingshot. And I always use the slingshot as an example. And the slingshot, the purpose of a slingshot is to put a projectile in the sling and pull it back. And further back you pull it, the further in front you're going to project the projectile. And so that's what history is like. That's what we have to do is like. Particularly those of us who have forgotten, not lost. We didn't lose it. We forgot our history. Because when you lose something for children, you got to go out and look for it. But when you forgot it, all you got to do is remember. So all we got to do is remember this. You know Michael Jackson say, remember the time? Okay. So let me put your mind in this slingshot. And the further back I pull it, the further in the future I'm going to project you. My purpose of pulling your mind back is not to stay here, no more than it is to pull a projectile back. You're not pulling that back just to be like this. You're pulling it back with the intention of pushing it forward. And the further back you pull it, the further in front you're going to project it. And the same is true for your history. The further back you can go in your existence, the further back you can be conscious of who you are and know who you are, the further back you can go to understand what brought you where you are in the present, the further in the future you can project yourself. A prophet is not a psychic. A prophet is just a good historian. Because when you know what happened in the past, you can interpret what's happening in the present, and you can predict what's going to happen in the future. And that's what allows me, as I wind this section up, to tell you something. We as a people are going to get to the promised land. We're on our way there right now. We just don't know it because we're still living part in hell. I grew up Roman Catholic, right? And they used to say, like in Roman Catholicism, like when you died and they didn't know if they really wanted to put you in hell or send you to heaven, that you go to a place called limbo. And you'd stay in limbo until either enough people prayed for you, or in the Roman Catholic Church put enough money in the pot to get you there, light up enough candles to get you there, or something would happen that you could then prove whether or not you would go to heaven or to hell. And so that's where we are right now. We're in limbo. But we're on our way to the promised land. Because our ancestors, because don't let them fool you, AI does not mean artificial intelligence. AI means ancestral intelligence. Because that's what artificial intelligence is. It is the collection of all knowledge and wisdom that has ever existed. And it's put in a machine. Ancestral intelligence is when all information that has ever existed, will exist, and exists now is put in your mind. And all you got to do is call on it. And our ancestors are there for you.
Yes, sir, Baba. Seeing you in Tuskegee, right? The other day, back to your roots.
Yeah, man.
You know, in the South. Growing up, you know, I used to spend time in the country all the time on ranches, around horses, things like that. But, you know, we got people that's from New York who have roots down south, people on the West Coast. Why is that so important to always try to come back home to our roots?
You know, what was interesting is I read a book, and much regard to our brother Marcel, who has spoken about this. But I I read a book by a brother named Charles Blow, and he wrote a book titled The Devil That You Know. And so I bought a synopsis of the book online, and I read it, and he talked about the Great Migration.
Right.
The migration that I think the dates are like somewhere 1917 to 1971. There was large migrations of people from the South going north. And of course, that was so that they could steal the land.
Mm.
So if they got you up north,
Right.
then they just took your farms and things that you had. And they put in the minds of those that were traveling, because according to where you are was where you went. Because a lot of times you had family. Some would go to Los Angeles, some went to New York, some went to Boston, Blue Hill Avenue. Chicago, yeah. Okay. And they were made to believe that it was better. You know, the black folk were treated better. And, you know, my daddy came up in the late 30s from Tuskegee, Alabama, up to New York. He stayed with his aunt. My father used to always tell stories during the civil rights movement about Northerners that would go down south and be lecturing Southerners about how to act. Mm. You know, you don't have to take that. And, you know, the people down south used to laugh because they say, you know, they come down there doing all this talking. They don't know that they're around worse racists than we are. Because at least the white folk down here let you know. And they'll tell you the truth. That's what Malcolm said. During the election, Malcolm said that he had more respect for the senator who ran for president, Goldwater, Barry Goldwater. He had more respect for Barry Goldwater than he did for Lyndon Johnson, because at least Barry Goldwater tell you the truth.
Sure. Yep.
He let you know the boundaries, and under those conditions, then you set your boundaries. So you let them know where you coming from. And so this great migration took place, and part of my real desire to come back, and yesterday went to Tuskegee and applied for a birth certificate of my father, Booker T. Coleman Sr., and also went to a place called Franklin, right outside Tuskegee, that's where he lived, you know, and I wanted to walk the path that he walked on. And it was a path yesterday, I'm telling you. But it was quite an experience for me as a Northerner. New York, man, I grew up in a project, right across from Lincoln Center, Amsterdam houses, okay? And many of my friends, their families came from North Carolina, South Carolina. In the Bronx, a lot of people from the Carolinas are in the Bronx. So I lived around a lot of them that went home for the summer vacation, things like that. But Charles Blow talks about the fact that if you really want black power, consider going into 6 states. Now, I'm going to combine this with what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us as it relates to get states that you control. Yeah. And so when you look at the idea of returning back Louisiana, as far north as Maryland, Alabama, okay, the Carolinas, there's a lot of black folk. Mississippi is the largest state of black folk. More black folk in Mississippi than any other state in the 50. And so if we were to do that and go into become our own senators, we would up the amount of black senators immediately, Congress people immediately. We would up, and by the way, when you run in the state, when you run in certain things, you don't have to ask nobody for reparations. They give you reparations. Something we can do. This is doable. And if you're up north, and if you work let's say you work as a custodial engineer, let's say you work in an office building, why not just go down south and get the job down there? And then to create the safe havens for our people and for our children. And so what I'm looking at, maybe not in my lifetime, but I will begin the process of thinking on that level and coming here and promoting, because you're already here, so I don't have to tell you to go south. But I'm telling other people from all around the country, you need to start to think about this. You need to start thinking about what Brother Marcel is telling us and what Brother Charles Blow is telling us in his book, The Devil That You Know. That look, you ain't gonna get the kind of land up north. I ain't gonna get no farm in New York. But I can get it down here. I can buy land down here. I can combine forces with people down here. And then, of course, what I wanted to share with you, one of the things I want to share with you is that as an educator, I got our own curriculum. This is our curriculum. If somebody said to me, well, what would you teach the children when you get them in class? This is the curriculum that I would teach them. This is something that I've worked on since 1987, when I went to Kemet for the second time. I went to Mexico with Dr. Van Sertima in 84, and I went to Egypt with Dr. Ben twice. This summer, I'm going to co-host a tour going back to Egypt, Kemet. And this is the curriculum that everybody's going to get, because when we go to work. And I'm going to show you the science and the math of our ancestors. I'm going to show it to you so that when you go and you stand before the pyramids, you understand what went into those building that. All those millions of bricks. When we go down to Luxor, I'm going to show you things about the Grand Lodge of Luxor in math and science. Because we got to get back academically to where we were. Our people were geniuses. We taught them what they know. And so we got to come back. And I think that if we could relocate to a place that was friendlier for us in some of the states that is located where we are as a people, there would be strength. We would run things. And everything that you see happening is because of that. When you see what's happening in Florida, they are frightened of what's happening. They're even telling you that. When they say you ain't gonna have a country no more. But that's just trying to scare them, because I got news for them. You ain't got this country. Because if it wasn't for us, this country would fall. We don't know that, because we keep thinking that they've given us. So that going back home, walking the path of my father, I know a lot about my mother's family from Boston. Yesterday was the first time I set foot in Alabama. Wow. First time I set foot in Tuskegee. Toured Tuskegee University. Dr. Clark used to always tell me that, because my name was Booker Taliaferro, named after my father named after Booker T. Washington. My father used to always, Dr. Clark used to always tell me that, you know Booker T? Booker T. Washington was one of the most misunderstood men in history. Everybody, myself included, we perceived him as an Uncle Tom. Okay? But we didn't know what that brother was doing. That was the original brother that sat at the, who was the spook who sat by the classroom door. I'm just trying to relive what he did and watch what he did. And what he did in Tuskegee. And let me tell you something, there's a lot of great people that have crossed our paths in life. We have the phenomenal work of W.E.B. Du Bois. We have the phenomenal work of someone such as Marcus Garvey. But what Booker T. Washington did is still here and flourishing. And that's very important to understand. What your legacy is, what people will talk about, you can go out and you can buy Du Bois's books, which are phenomenal pieces of literature. I mean, Souls of Black Folks, the Reconstruction, the World in Africa. I mean, he was a phenomenal thinker and producer, okay? Not taking anything away. I'm looking at it from an analytical perspective. Marcus Garvey was creating chapters in places he never went. Ain't no internet, scarce radio, no TV, no cars, no airplanes. How did he get the word out across the globe? Phenomenal. Created the Universal Negro Improvement Association. But Booker T. Washington's legacy still exists and is flourishing. It went from an institute to a university. And so having that experience and just the years of conversations in my family, of my family in Tuskegee, it was just a phenomenal experience. Met two brothers, Got some pictures up on my Instagram page. Met two brothers. One brother is building homes in Franklin. Another brother is digging water wells. Because no matter what you build, ain't no house, no city can survive without a source of water. One of the first things you do before you create a city is find your source of water. And so those two brothers combined can create a city right there. They can create something and they can become their own mayors, their own House of Representatives, and all the rest of that right there because they got it going on because they are building. The brother got land in Costa Rica. He going next week to build some homes in Costa Rica.
Wow.
Okay? This is what this brother's doing. And so I think that with the many things that we can bring back to the South with what we've experienced, my lane is a school. Because I want to create charter schools on the campus of Tuskegee Institute. I want to create charter schools on the campus of Morehouse and Spelman and Clark Atlanta. I also want to start HBCUs in South Central Bronx, in Detroit. The reason why they're all down south is, of course, because of the nature. This is where our home is. This is where black folk were. But now that we're all around the United States, I want to create an HBCU in Hawaii. They got black people in Hawaii. In fact, the first people in Hawaii were black, known as the Lapita people. They were related to the black people that we call the Khalifa that created California. And so my dream, my thoughts, my ideas are far beyond just what we have. But again, if I had 3 lifetimes of 250 years, I may get this on my 150th birthday. But Dr. Clark always said that, and he told me, Dr. John Henry Clark, great historian for those that may not know, he taught me and he said to me, he said, you know, you may not reach your destination. He was talking about a lifespan. He wasn't talking about anybody dying young. He was just talking about a lifespan. He said that, you know, you may not reach your goal in your life, but if you leave the proper roadmap, those that come behind you will pick it up and keep on your path where you were going. And that's this study guide. This study guide is a outline, an extended outline of all the work, all the lessons, all the books that I believe it's broken up into themes, not necessarily books, because we create book clubs, much respect to book clubs. But I'm a thematic person. I think thematically. For instance, my book Shabaka Stone. In fact, we'll bring out my book so that you can get a better sense of what I'm talking about. My book Shabaka Stone is about African astronomy. It's about how our ancestors envisioned the world coming into existence. It's a very important document. The Shabaka Stone actually is the New Testament and the Old Testament combined. That's where the Bible came from Shabaka Stone. Okay? That's where Buddhism came from. That is where Rosicrucian, Zoroastry, came from. It couldn't have been Judaism, because the letter J didn't exist until 1526, but what we call Hebrew came from that. But you know what's interesting? When you go to the Bible, I grew up Roman Catholic. Okay, I told you that. I was a choir boy. I was an altar boy. Would you believe I wanted to be a priest? Oh my goodness. Dr. Clark fixed that. But when you read the New Testament, that basically is what you might consider to be Jewish history. The 5 books of Moses, basically, the Torah. And it comes in different forms. It comes in a written form, it comes in a vocal form, and it also comes in a form that's known as the Kabbalah, which is the spiritual essence of what we call Judaism. But everybody don't know about Kabbalah. It's the same way in Islam. You have something known as Sufism in Islam. Sufism is the spiritual African grounding of where Islam came from. Kabbalah is the spiritual African grounding of where Hebrewism, or what we today call Judaism, came from. Phenomenal faith system. In my book, Spirituality Before Religion, I don't have any problem with any religions. And I tell people all the time, they say, well, what religion are you? I say, well, I'm all of them because I'm African. And all religions came out of Africa, African spirituality. So if you ask me if I'm Jewish, I'm Jewish. I'm Christian. I'm Buddhist. I'm all of that. And I'm all of that because Africa is all of that. Fundamentally. And that's the way knowledge and wisdom is. But you know what's interesting about, they tell you the New Testament, but the New Testament came after the Old Testament because the Old Testament is the Amen priesthood. Because that's where you get Christianity from, Kares. That is why you have a pope, because that was the Pharaoh. That's why you have the cardinals, because they were the high priests and priestesses. So what they did is they took our faith system and superimposed their mythology over it. And then in Judaism, that came out during Akhenaten's time, which now you're dealing with thousands of years after the Amen priesthood. And Akhenaten, his name was Amenhotep IV. He was an Amen priesthood, coming out of his father, who was Amenhotep III. And Amenhotep III and his wife, Queen Tai, that's actually where they get Solomon and Sheba from. And then Akhenaten's son, King Tut, is the story of Jesus. Now, I know I said a lot right there. And I know if you had told me this when I was 9 years old, I would have had a heart attack. But when someone tells a perfect lie, the truth is unbelievable. They stole the essence of who we are as a people. I heard there's a new word out called tether. And they tethered themselves to us and stole it and then claimed that they created it. The oldest Bibles in the world that you'll find, even the more current Bibles, comes out of Ethiopia. And long before there was the Book of Life, or what they call the Book of the Dead, there was an Ethiopian Book of Life. It was called Lefafa Sadek. Lefafasedek. Lefafa Sadek was the Book of Life that came out of Ethiopia, upon which was brought into Kush Kemet, that became the Book of the Dead, or the Papyrus of Ani. So that when you look at who we are as a people, when you look at, we want to bring this back down. I don't want you not to be a Christian no more. I'm not here to tell you don't be a Christian. I'm here to tell you to Africanize your Christianity. I'm not here to tell you don't be a Hebrew Israelite. I want you to Africanize your Hebrew Israelite. I don't want you to not be a Muslim, even though Islam came out of the mountains of Ethiopia, based in an African language. I don't want you to change, I don't want you to leave. Continue to celebrate Ramadan. Okay, what they say, Eid Mubarak. Celebrate it, but understand that's African. And so when you're fasting, what you're fasting, even in Christianity, you have the 40 days of Lent where you're supposed to fast. Right. Fasting was part of the African tradition. Fasting is a part of life. And so when you fast, what you're really doing is you're going within to bring out. You are not activating your digestive system in order for you to be able to take in the spiritual system, in order for you to be able to come to a mental state where you now have an entire, now in terms of Ramadan, you have now 11 months to prosper from what you did that 1 month of Ramadan. It's a beautiful idea. I don't have a problem with any of these religions. I have a problem with the interpretations because they're Indo-European and they're warped and they're contaminated. And any civilization that does not have the sister or the woman sitting beside her is doomed to fall. You going out here talking about you going to have a revolution and you ain't got sisters involved, that ain't no revolution. That's nothing but a fist fight. Sisters have always been some of the greatest warriors in all of the battles that we have fought, from the most ancient of times to where we are right now. That's why you see sisters doing what they're doing now. Sisters be showing themselves now. Sure. Sisters be kicking up some dust out here now. Okay? You know, no matter how you feel about Donald Trump, it's going to be two sisters that bring him down. and a brother in New York named Alvin Bragg. Everybody else can't do nothing to him. But you got them sisters going to tear him up. I'm telling you, don't mess with sisters. And don't ever underestimate a black woman. Let me tell you something. They don't sit in front of us. They're not behind us. They're not above us. They're not below us. They are beside us. Together, ma'at. Together we rule. Long before we were calling them that B word. And all those words that we have for them now, we call them the Hemet Neset Waret. Hemet Neset Waret, when you look at the metaphor, it means that deep well of water that I return to when I'm parched by the desert. Now, I don't know if you've ever been parched by the desert. I've been in the Sahara. And I don't know if you've ever been parched by the desert, but when you parched by the desert, right, when dust be coming out your mouth, out your nose, there's only one thing you're thinking about, and that's water. That's all you're thinking about, water. That's the only thing that's going to solve your problems and meet your needs. And that sister is not just water. She's not just a well of water. She's a deep well of water, which means that sister going to solve your issues. Whatever problem you have, it's a metaphor. Whatever problems you have, your sister is going to solve your problems. That's what built the pyramids, that type of relationship between the man and the woman, recognizing the importance of co-living together, okay? And in all of the different forms of life that we have, however we may choose our partner, okay? Because that's another thing that we're dealing with right now, that we just don't understand certain concepts. We have to have deep conversations and respectful conversations with each other as black folk. Really, we do. We have to have these types of conversations. Some of us are not ready to have those conversations because we get very emotional. And we bring in a lot of other situations, which I understand, but that's not going to solve what we need to do. There are many different types of people in the world with many different types of leanings as to what they wish in their life. We should live by the concept, we're going to live and let live, we're going to love and let love. I belong to a very exclusive club. I wish more people belong to it. Many people claim to belong to it, but they don't. The name of my club got a long title. Okay, so let me tell you the whole title. The name of my club is I Mind My Own Damn Business. Because the day I started, this is still part of the title, because the day I started minding my own damn business was the day I came to realize how much damn business I had to mind. Sometimes I wish I had 25 hours on my day and 8 weeks, 8 days to my week, and 367 days in my year. Like I say, I wish I could live 250 years 3 times. Right. I don't see how any of us could be getting up in each other's business the way we do. Yeah. I'm so busy at the end of the day, and I'm only doing part of what my thing is. How am I getting other people's business and tell them what they should be doing, who they should be loving, what they should be doing? Who am I to tell them that? If I'm doing my thing right, that's the only thing I should be focused on. Right. Everything else is other people's business. We're always getting into other people's business, trying to tell them what to do. No. See, I judge a person by the content of their character. Dr. King said it. I judge you by the content of your character. I'm looking for warriors, okay? When the war horn is blown, who's on the front line? Where my dogs at? That's what I'm looking for. Where my dogs at? Other than that, it make me no difference who you are, what you do, who you love, or anything else that goes into that. As a people, we were very much like that. But this society is so warped and so perverted. They have created developments that they define what is right, what is wrong, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. Nature will tell you that. Bob Marley said, no man can rule like that, you know. So we got to come home. And I think that setting the stage for it, Brother Caleb,
Yes, sir.
Starting the process of just talking about the concept of, hey, if you're up north and you ain't happy, think about coming to Alabama, okay? Think about coming to Georgia. Think about coming to Louisiana. You know, think about North Carolina, South Carolina, where your vote can count, where the people that will represent you will represent you and not the interest that put them there.
That's right.
And once we start that process, then a lot of other things can come into play. And then therefore, there are a lot of things we won't have to ask for. They'll just come naturally because everybody's going to be looking out for each other.
Sir, Bob. Ancestral information goes a bar, because during this time, everybody's talking about AI, not knowing and not even just realizing, hey, learning from you, our elders, learning from our ancestors as well. You can bridge that gap between John Henry Clark to us.
Yes.
Dr. Ivan Van Sertima to us.
Yeah.
How can we properly approach our elders, our grandparents, when it comes to learning about these stories, our roots? And then also, in reverse, our grandparents learning from us, whether it's about social media, technology, new information as well.
Oh, yeah, man. That's a phenomenal question, because there are many people within our families that don't think like this, you know? And, you know, like people say, oh, he gonna come here with that African stuff.
On the holidays, huh?
Yeah. Oh, man. It's Christmas. Okay, don't bring no ancestor worship Kwanzaa to me, okay? Because they don't understand. You know, they fundamentally don't, because by matter of degree, and I say, love your family, because you are your family.
Right. Don't
hold nothing against them. Malcolm used to always say, don't ever forget where you were before you found out the truth.
That's right.
You know, in my own particular individual case, I was always in it. So I never thought anything else. Even when I was a choir boy, an altar boy, wanted to be a priest, there was something that was haunting me. There was a cloud that was hanging over my head because I knew there was something that wasn't right. So that I understand that for some folk that have never been introduced to this kind, like what I just told you about Shabakistan, for so many of our phenomenal brothers and sisters who are deeply steeped in the Christian church, I'm a heretic. When I tell them, you are the creator having a human experience, okay? Their eyes, oh man, almost bounce out their head. That's heretical to say something like that. Because their image, with respect, is outside of themselves. That's a slave mentality. That's what they taught. Not just black folk, white folk too. Right. That's the only way the rich could control the poor. That's the lords and the serfs. Go check out feudalism. Look at what they did to Europeans. Yeah. The Lord, just look at the name that he gave himself. The Lord, and it was always a man. The Lord and the serfs. Okay? That's like the master and the slave. Right. Okay? So that concept was always there in their minds. And us going through this process of being enslaved, being tortured, murdered, living in a state of mayhem, or what's called ma'afa, a terroristic disaster. Just living it every day. Can you imagine living that every day? A week before, there was a time he came into town on a donkey. And the people laid palms at his feet. And they said, Hosanna in the highest. Right. Okay? They honored him. And they respected him. And they brought him to levels of adoration. But by that next Friday, the same people that honored him on Sunday tacked him to a cross and put a crown of thorns on his head, spit on him, kicked him, made him carry his cross to where he was going to be put onto a cross and tacked. Black folk on the plantation said, that sounds like us. And they became enraptured with this story of this Jesus. And it became a crutch. It became something that they could live for because they didn't want to commit suicide. They didn't enjoy the way they was living. So they lived vicariously through this character of Jesus the Christ. And it became part of their life. They were brought through a process. And now we're here in the 21st century. And all those generations of believing that story that allowed them to be able to deal with Jim Crow, allowed them to be deal with their houses being put on fire, allowed running into their homes and shooting up their families and all the horrible things that we've gone through, having the police shoot down, put their knee on your neck, suffocate you to death. Christianity helps them through that. It's something that helps our people through that process. And I understand that. And I respect and understand the process of what Christianity has meant to you. And Christianity, for some of our people, I'm still working on our families. I'm gonna come back.
Oh yeah, you good. You good. You cook it.
To me, it's like a house on weak stilts. I would never want to hurt our people.
Right.
Ever. I know that we as a people have been hurt enough. We don't need to keep hurting each other by telling them what you believe in ain't right. I would rather give them my book, Spirituality Before Religions, and let them put stronger stilts underneath the house so that the weak ones will fall away. Because I don't have a religion. And some people need to belong to something to have meaning and purpose in their life. I personally don't need anything outside of myself. So that many of us now move into other religions that we hold tight to.
Right.
And that we fight for. And I understand that. And so many of our elders are really attached to this faith system because that's all they've had that's let them live through this horrific situation that we've been through in the world, but particularly in America. I mean, this has been some situation. And it's what has helped us get through this. So that for our families, I love our families no matter what. Grandma, I love you very dearly, okay? And I'll always love you. But I just maybe not follow certain situations. And that 10% tithe that you give,
Right.
okay, that they ask you for your tax form to make sure you're giving 10% of your money before you put your card in that ATM in the basement of your church to give the church money, and the ATM says, look, you ain't getting no change. So don't think you're going to ask for 20, get back 10 and give the church 10. You put 20, church get 20. I've been in churches like that, so I know what I'm talking about. That 10% tithe could have gone into you being able to buy a car so you don't have to walk to work every day.
Wow.
You know, that 10% tithe could have gone so that you could put food on your table, Grandma, or to pay for your diabetes medicine or whatever it is that you need to spend that money on, because that pastor driving a Lex. And he live about 3 miles away from home. He live in a luxury house, and you're up in a housing project. Okay? So you may not tell her that, but by leading by example, you might be able to show. I believe in leading by example, because I believe that works far better than just preaching to people about certain things. So I say, love our family, honor them and respect them, but you keep on the path that you're going on. And there'll be some conversations that you may not be able to engage in. So you just sit there and smile, because they're all going to look at you anyway and know why you're smiling, because they say, he ain't going to agree with nothing I'm saying right now. And that's okay, because that, you see, because when you take it from being angry to being a joke, the next thing is to take it serious. Right. And so your way of doing it may be to stop fighting, start laughing, and then just explain to them what you're talking about. Right. And the way to do that is to study, to know your history, and to be able to show them evidence, because black folk know truth. The one thing about black folk know truth, because we've been lied to for so long. We have a sense of smell of truth. Okay? Now, we may let you get away with that lie, but we know you're lying. for whatever reason. But our thing is just easy. Just move through life easy. You know, because when you get too deep and sort of, then families start breaking up and start arguing with each other because to them, that's all they have. You have more than that. When you know knowledge, wisdom, and consciousness, when you know truth, 1,000,000 can tell a lie and one tell the truth, and the one truth is in the majority. Truth knows truth. Ma'at, truth, justice, harmony, balance, order, arrangement, and my favorite, reciprocity. Reciprocity, what goes around, comes around. You shall reap what you sow. You shall get what you give. And I ask us as balanced human beings, if you really believed that whatever you did to somebody else was going to come back on you, would you really do that? Because if you, and then a lot of what you do will come back sevenfold. So if you do bad to somebody, it comes back on you sevenfold. If you do good for somebody, it comes back on you sevenfold. Would you really treat people the way you treat them if you really believe that? If you really believed that if I should hurt somebody, transgress against somebody, that whatever I did to them is going to come back on me. If I was willing to do that, then there's a mental issue that you have. And when you wish bad on somebody, even in your thoughts, it's like you drinking poison, hoping that they die. Yeah. Because those ill feelings are going within you. See, this is the beauty of black folk in America. Because I'm going to tell you something else that some may not agree with, but I ask that you just understand the scope of what I'm going to say. South Carolina, this individual goes into a church and shoots 9 people, kills them, goes to court. The families of the black people where this white boy shot him, Dylan Roof, they say to him, I forgive you. Black folk had a lot of problems with that. But I don't know as it relates from a black perspective. See, a lot of us look at forgiveness as a word from a white perspective, but we don't look at it from a black perspective. Because I think from a black perspective, what those families were saying, I cannot hate you for me to carry that hate in my heart for the rest of my life for what you did. I've got to be free. So my forgiving you is not that I forgive you as you think I am. I'm forgiving you so I can move on from this point in my life. This is the kind of thought process that black folk have had to have to survive, because we'd go crazy if we ever held the anger, the animosity towards them for what they did to us over all these, and continue to do. Continue to do. We would go crazy. We would be sick in our stomachs and in our minds, in our hearts. Don't forget. But understand the forgiveness that we're talking about. It is not a Christian forgiving. It's a human ability to move beyond carrying that animosity in us. I can only imagine what those families felt. I can only imagine what they felt. There will come a day when we're going to handle that differently. Okay, that forgiveness may just come about with that person's extinction. But right now, until we get ourselves together, there's another way we got to handle our business. And little by little, step by step, it's happening. But we got to measure it and be smart and be able to do in life what we need to do. And with our families, we extend our love to them. And the only way I could ever honor And this is interesting because when I first met Dr. Clark when I was 12 and a half, he said, oh, Booker T, you're going to become a great teacher one day. I wasn't even thinking about becoming a teacher. I want to be an astronaut. But you see how things work out. I did become a teacher. So he was laying the groundwork for me back when I was 12 and a half. I didn't even realize it for a number of years. But when I think about my relationships and where I've grown and where we as a people have grown throughout my life, I have had to bend principles, but I've never broken any. And you have to understand the balance of when to bend, but never to break. Because when you break, you can never repair. When you bend, you can reshape. And in this society, our ancestors were able to do some phenomenal things as it relates to bending principles. Come in, the owner of the big house come down and ask Jed, say, Jed, what you know about this Underground Railroad? Jed say, Massa, Underground Railroad? What's that? I ain't never heard of Underground. What Underground Railroad, Massa? He said, oh, Jed, man, you stupid. You don't know. Okay, forget it. That night, Jed was on the Underground Railroad. Okay? Yeah. He bent the principle. That's right. But he didn't break it. You see? There's a difference. Yeah. And we were smart enough to know how to do it. I often think when it comes to Christianity and a lot of the religions that we attach ourselves to blindly, there's a proverb that says that when a spiritual system no longer meets your needs and solves your problems, it's like carrying the boat on your back after you cross the river. Because while it was that very thing that got you across to your safety, if you keep carrying it on your back, it becomes a burden. You got to dock that boat. You may have to cross that river again. Right. Don't destroy it. Just dock it, but walk free on the land. I believe that religion acts as an anchor for some of us in our lives. It contains and controls and dominates us as it relates to our thought process. Mm-hmm. And so I think that when you look at our ancestors, I'm just going to give you two concepts just to let you know when we talk about the ancestors, who we talk about. If we should say that a generation is 25 years long, every 25 years is a new generation. And if I were to take you back 20 generations, you have 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents, 16 great-great-grandparents, okay? If I took you back 20 of those generations, through your direct ancestors and their ancestors, the question is, how many people dwell in you that allow you to sit here right now? And that number is 1,048,576 human beings live inside of you right now over the past 500 years who have lived and brought you into existence. Think about that number. 500 years ago, it started a process of 1,048,576 human beings dwell in each and every one of you. But let me drop the other shoe, because I only took you back 500 years. How many live in you if I took you back 5 million years? How many people make you up? That's right. You think you're alone? Do you know how many stories of happiness and sadness and celebration and joy and leaders and doctors and nurses live inside of you? And they want to talk to you. They see where you're going. Through your eyes, your ancestors see the world. All you got to do is turn those eyes inward and look to them to support what it is. People say, like, how do you pray? Well, I talk to myself. That's how I pray. Because I am the creator having a human experience, and so is each and every one of you. So when you talk to yourself, those are your ancestors talking to you, trying to guide you through a certain way, and they're telling you certain things. So there's a whole bunch of folk that's inside of you that is just waiting for you to activate with them. Now, that's how many people came into existence in order to bring you into existence. Now, let me give you the other side that gives you your divine purpose in life, because now I'm going to tell you how many people did not come into existence in order to bring you into existence, that sidestepped and said, no, this is Brother Caleb's time to come into existence. This is Sister Sid's time to come into existence. Do you know how many billions of sperm cells were in your father? And how many billions of eggs were in your mother? But it came a divine time that only one egg and one spermatozoon would fertilize to bring you into existence. Think of all those millions of sperm cells that hovered over your mother's egg that you ain't in. But that one. Think of all of the eggs that your mother had that she processed to go through her fallopian tube in order to become fertilized by you. There was billions of choices. Yet there was just that one. There was billions of sperm cells, but there was just that one. Not only did billions of people bring you into existence, but billions of people sidestepped in order for you to come into existence the day you were conceived. That's ancestral intelligence. That's the computer of your body, of your mind, of your existence. That is a cosmic computer. So everybody getting all caught up in artificial intelligence, that's a good thing. Artificial intelligence is a good thing. Money is too, as it relates to money, okay? Money ain't bad. It's according to what you do with it that makes it good or bad. You know, I mean, if you support Live Water, if you support Black Wall Street, if you support 3 Milli Productions, if you support Brother Kaba, your money's doing good things. It's emancipating and liberating you. But if you put it in other places, that may not be the best place to put it. The same thing with so-called artificial intelligence. I mean, what I've seen done in artificial intelligence is something else. They're building a Black Panther museum where they're literally bringing Huey Newton into the room with you. In other areas of the museum, they're bringing people, and they because of the history of what they know about that individual can talk to you and tell you about. You can go to Tuskegee at the museum there, and they'll talk to you. Booker T. Washington will come and tell you what he did in order to create Tuskegee, and you'll be looking right at him. Didn't they do that with Tupac? Yeah. Okay, so that's a great thing. But now when you take advantage of it and you bring people down and you show them in a negative light, now that's a whole nother thing. Artificial intelligence is neither good nor bad. It's how you use it that determines what it's going to be. That's the way it is in life. Most things in life are not good or bad. This is what Ma'at teaches us. Ma'at, which is the patron, the feminine principle of truth and justice, teaches us. It's not what it is that's bad or good. It's what you do with it. It's whether you let Asar do something with it, which is good, or you let Satan do something which is not good. So it's up to us to make these choices. You got to talk to your ancestors. And when you talk to yourself, I mean, I had a conversation this morning with a whole bunch of my ancestors. When I was looking in the mirror, I was brushing my teeth. I was looking at God. I was talking to God. I was looking at me because I am God, having a human experience, and I know it. See, there are 3 levels. In humanity, and this comes from John G. Jackson, his book, Introduction to African Civilization. He talks about 3 levels of the human family coming up out of who they are. There is the level of the savage, the barbarian, and there is the civilized, okay? And these are the 3 different entities. In the very beginning, as savages, we were like on an animalistic stage, okay? None of these words are bad, by the way, because I know we think of savage as bad, barbarian is bad. We're not dealing with those. I'm taking those words and I'm looking at the human family as the mind and the intellect developed. The savage was the one that had an instinct, that did things through instinct, lived through instinct, knew when it was time to reproduce, knew when it was time to eat, knew when it was time to go to bed. Nature was the one that directed them and told them what to do. At some point in time, as they had a collected experience of learning and growing, the savage became the barbarian. And in the barbarian came a level of doing things that nature told you to do, but doing things that you told yourself to do. You were gaining the power to say no to nature. Then came the point where you became civilized, where you got instinctive intuition, where what you did because you knew nature and nature directed you, but you as a human being of a higher level of consciousness allowed nature to take over, and you took nature to the next level, the higher level of which you were born to do. It was a phenomenal way of doing what you did. As a savage, our philosophy dealt with superstition. We looked at things through superstition. A lot of what we did through superstition. We say, don't go under a ladder, okay? Well, the reason why you don't go under a ladder, because you may hit it and the person will fall. There's no real superstition behind that. There's just a law that says, don't put yourself or someone in a ladder in a dangerous position. They say if you break a mirror, you'll have 7 years bad luck. Okay, no, you don't have 7 years bad luck, but mirrors were so scarce at a certain time. If you broke a mirror, then you could never see the reflection of yourself, so they were considered very special. They wanted you to possess it, but to do that, you had to handle it with great care. But that was superstition. The laws of nature came to you through ways in which they would make you do what you're supposed to do because you're afraid not to do it. And then as the barbarian, you went from superstition to organized superstition, which was religion. And so a lot of what you did through codification of laws and rules of nature, and you lived by those laws and rules of nature. That's the barbarian. But then as that barbarian developed himself philosophically, they began to look up and, like, for instance, the barbarian would look up at the sun and would worship the sun as the sun. But when they went from barbarian to civilized, you looked up at the sun and you realized the properties of the sun. You came to realize that the sun was the reason for all life on earth. You came to realize that all plants and all animals reacted to nature. The other day was the day of resurrection. Everybody talking about, don't look at the sun during the solar eclipse. That was resurrection. The sun was born. And then all of a sudden the moon came across and the sun died. Everything got dark. And then the moon passed by and the sun came back. The sun was resurrected. That was an astronomical story. And that is embedded in the stories of Africa. We're going to Kemet from June 16 to June 26. We're going specifically so we can be in the temple of Edfu on June 20th. June 20th, that Edfu was built specifically for the summer solstice. We want to be in that temple on the 20th in order to honor through our ancestral understanding the summer solstice, which means the sun stands still. Right now, you notice the spring equinox, days and nights are equal, 12 and 12, 12 hours a day, 12 hours of night. Now, from now until the summer solstice, every day is going to get longer, okay? And then when you get to the solstice, it's going to stand still, and then every day is going to start to get shorter, and you'll have more days of darkness than light. But right now, from now until June 20th, on June 20th, all animals, they just go in adoration of the sun. All of the plants aim all of their energy up towards, they all lean towards the sun on June 20th. Everything is an adoration of the sun because that's the longest day on our earth. And so our ancestors began to realize this happening. They weren't doing it because they were superstitious, or they weren't doing it for religious reasons. They were doing it because of scientific reasons. And when they did it for scientific reasons, that's when they were able to become civilized enough to understand that spirituality is unseen science and science is seen spirituality. And it became a science. People win awards. I see all these brothers and sisters winning awards. Grammy Award, Oscar Award, okay? And most of them are black. Much respect. Congratulations on all you did. But they all look up and say, thank God for this. Why are you looking up there? God didn't win that award. You did. The actor in you, the God in you that gave you that divine gift of acting or singing, that's who won the award. But see, the imposter syndrome, we're always looking outside. We are so humble that we always look outside because we can't be that great. We got to give all glory to God. But God is within you. Your holy book said it. God said that he made you in his image and likeness. That's why I trip over the word his. Because a whole bunch of women look in the mirror too. So what's that?
That's right.
So God, in order for there to be a God, there must be a goddess. Ain't no such thing as a male God only. Just doesn't exist. Just the fact that each and every one of us is half man, half woman. Mm-hmm. It was just our daddy's chromosome that decided that I would become a man and that his X chromosome made my sister a woman. So we're all half man and half woman, the perfect balance of ma'at. But we are gender in the sense that that is how we came into the world. It's just the way it is. Yeah. And so it's science. And so with our families, we just have to have regard and respect for them. And love them, respect them, continue to go to all the dinners, let them speak, because that's what they live. Yeah. Because other than that, we're just going to tear ourselves apart over a contaminated story that someone else told us. And we're going to lose the most precious thing we have, which is our family, because we're fighting over something that is no reason to fight. Let's come together and work this out together. And let me show you the greatness of knowing your history and your culture. Allow me, permit me, Grandma, to continue to love you, but I hope that you love me enough to let me be who I am, because let me show you by example. I'm the same person I would have been if I went to church with you on Sunday. I just ain't going to go to church with you on Sunday, but I'm still going to love you. I'm still going to come to eat and to enjoy you and to laugh with you. Just understand, I don't think that way. But I respect your way of thinking because I understand why you think that way. We've been through a lot, family. A lot of pain, a lot of struggle. But through that, we're still here. And it's our families. If it wasn't for Grandma, we wouldn't be here. Right. If it wasn't for Mama, we wouldn't be here. So that with that respect, that regard, and that love, we still can always do what we're doing, but at the same time, stay true to what we believe in and respect what they believe in.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Passing the torch, right, is so important because now I'll see older people saying, young people are just wild, we're messing things up. We're not grateful, and younger people are mad towards our grandparents, right? Of saying, y'all don't understand us, y'all don't get us. How do we properly try to bridge that gap?
I think that, from my own perspective, because I am where I am right now, and because I've been around young people,
right?
I'll give you an example. I have up on my site conversations I've had on the word nigger. Okay. And I know that for my generation and generations before, that word nigger, we watched people die with that word. Right. We watched people suffer. We watched fire hoses being put on our people, blasting their clothes off because of the ferocity of the water that's coming out of that hose. The same firemen that would come to put out our house took off our clothes with the same fire hose. The police, the Ku Klux Klan, we heard that word. But we don't really know the origin of that word. And so therefore we think that nigger is a bad word. Nigger is not a bad word. Nigger is a word, and the way I introduce it, because I realize that people may not understand it from certain perspectives. So I use the concept of this military person that was impacted by this woman by the name of Helene Blavatsky. And Helene Blavatsky was a Russian woman that went to the East, went to Tibet and studied the Eastern systems. And she came back to Europe and she brought a lot of the symbols with her back. And this military person took this symbol and emblazoned it on everything that he could come in contact with, flags, on clothes, and on buildings, on everything. And out of that, he then took a people and he treated them horribly. He created great pain for them, for that. And everywhere that those individuals that were being oppressed looked, they saw that symbol. That symbol that he took was a very sacred symbol in Buddhism, and it came from Africa. It represented balance. If you go and if you round it out, it becomes the yin, the yang. You can take that symbol and understand that it represents an elliptical galaxy. That symbol represents all things that come into fruition through divine order. It's a beautiful word. It's a beautiful concept, and it's a beautiful symbol. But when that evil man took that symbol and put it on a flag and put it on the country, every time that person that was being persecuted looked at that symbol, it brought pain to them. It brought a horrific experience to them. So what was once a good symbol became a bad symbol. And I'm talking about Adolf Hitler. And I'm talking about the swastika.
Yeah.
And the swastika represents, it means black mark. Swastika. Swastika. It means black mark. So if I were to go into a room with peoples of Jewish faith and draw that symbol on the board, they would have a heart attack. They wouldn't even know what I'm about to do. But they would have, because that symbol brings back that feeling, that pain, that suffering of that symbol and what it represents. Even though it's a beautiful symbol in its origin, a dirty man took a beautiful symbol and dirtied it. Okay? That's how I introduced the word nigger. Because nigger is a good word. It means God. Negus negusti. Ngola. Nigeria. That inger, it's the sound. You see, the Indo-European people are very, I call them superficial sapiens. They interpret everything on a superficial level. They only see things superficially. They don't go deep. They can't go deep because they were never around when it was deep. They only got it when it was surface. And so they took this this concept of language and they created, well, symbols were already created, but they took the symbols and they got caught up in the symbols as opposed to the sounds. The sound is what you have to get to in language, because when we make sound, even black folk, you know we make sound. You know, You see? Now all y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, some of my shoulder get involved. Okay, you know what I'm talking about. We make sound. Whoa, that's a sound. We all know what that is. Okay, so it's the sound that the original humans got involved in. Inger is the sound that you got to get involved in. Inger, when it phonetically is presented, inger becomes nigr, negus, negusti, inger, neter, because the T and the G can be interchanged in language. So that what's happening is that this word nigger, when the Romans came and asked them who they were, they said, I am Inger. I am Negus Negusti, King of Kings, Lord of Lords. It was a good word. And then the Romans didn't have that word in their vocabulary, so they put it into their vocabulary. And then when Vulgar Latin then branched off into French and Italian and Romanian and Spanish, and the Spaniards came to Africa, impacted by the Moors, and brought black folk to America, they called them Inger or Negros. And Negros was anglicized to nigger. And then nigger became a social status. They used to have in white schools down south, before they had the dunce cap, they had a nigger chair.
Wow.
And that if you acted up, they told you sit in the nigger chair. This is how deep it gets. So nigger became a social status. It became a place that you did not want to be, and they put it on black folk because we were the ones that were enslaved, and we were the ones that they were trying to demoralize as a human people. And so nigger is a word that Dick Gregory named one of his books in the 70s because he said, I want to use that word so much it's not going to hurt us no more. Because, you know, there is a derogatory term for every cultural group. Whether you be Italian, Irish, there's Jewish terms. The word slave comes from Europe, Slovakia, You notice during Ukraine, what do you hear them keep saying? You keep the Slava, glory to Slava forever, because that's where the word slave came from. Yugoslavia, they were the first slaves. So slave is not our word. It's their word. But the idea is that when people can take something very beautiful, and how they treat that beauty can become very ugly to other people. And so you walk into a room and you say, yo, nigga, I love that nigga. That's a good looking nigga right there, okay? The older generation gonna have some situation with you when they listen to the music. When I was teaching college, I told them this story in class one day. And the alphas asked me, we need you to come and do a class on this, but not in class, but do it like we're going to create a program and you're going to come. And I said, sure, I'll come. And then the next year they said, oh, we got to do this again. And I did it again. That program has now become what they call Nigger Day.
Wow.
Okay, and the first thing that I tell them, I say, look, I'm not telling you to use that word. I'm not telling you not to use that word. I'm telling you, know the history of the word. And know that that word was what your grandmothers and your great-grandmothers and your parents died hearing as they were dying. That word was used to demoralize us, to insult us, to make us feel less than. So when the elders don't like that word, understand why they don't like it. And then to the elders, I try to get them to understand the meaning of the word, know the history of the word, right, so that you don't get caught up in it. And so in so many ways, going back to what you're asking me, Brother Caleb, is the fact that we have been brought through generations. Right. I think that one of my advantages that I think that I have is the fact that I've been around children throughout all of this transformation of these days. Mm-hmm. From the days that when I was young and that word was used, moving through to become a teacher in South Central Bronx where that word is used, through college the word is used, growing up through, when I first started teaching in 1979, the number one song on the radio was Rapper's Delight. Okay, the very beginnings of hip hop and rap music on radio. I was there, okay? And so my experiences with this word and what it represents has always been to know the history of the word and then decide if you want to use it. And if you're around adults, you have to understand if you use that word, they're not going to like it. And there's a reason. Here's why they don't like it. And then if you're among your own, you know, there's a different way that you take that word because it's all about intention. Okay, people of European descent say, well, you use it, can I use it? I say, no, you can't use it. Some of the funniest jokes I've ever heard told about Jewish people have been told by other Jews. But if I told that joke, people would have a problem with me. I've heard of funny jokes told about Italians. But if I told that joke, nobody would like that joke. White people can't use the word nigger. Black people can. Because the way in which you use the word towards a black person is very much like those who enslaved us. You don't have a right to use that word. And just because you hear us use that word don't mean you can use that word, no more than just because I heard a Jewish person tell a funny Jewish joke, I can't tell that joke, and I wouldn't tell that joke because I know it wouldn't be appreciated. So if you want to be appreciated, don't use that word, black people. You don't have a right to use that word. That's how I explain it. But that goes with everything else that's going on between us as a people. Because when Dick Gregory wrote that book and he called it nigger, he was trying to get it to where the young people got the word now because it don't hurt them. They say, yo, nigga, come on over here, man. I want to talk to you. Okay? When they say that, they don't mean harm. They're not talking about enslaving. That's the term. Just like back in the day in Ethiopia, they would say, you're my nigger. You're my leader. You're my spiritual leader. The same way they would say it. Can you imagine that? Yeah. Looking at ancient people in Ethiopia, they're saying, nigger. Imagine that. You know, but that's real. That's very real to what we're experiencing as a people. But because a dirty group of people did dirty things with that beautiful word, it has now come to be dirty on us. But now that dirt is sliding off because our young people don't see it like that anymore. Yeah. And so the elders need to understand that. Because at one time that word meant something real nice. Just like the swastika was all over Buddhism. It was all over Asia. But now if you put that up, that don't mean the same thing anymore. Because a dirty person did a dirty thing with a beautiful symbol. And that goes with everything else that we've experienced as a people. We need to know the history. But you see, family, much of my life was spent on the street, doing what I do, teaching. You can go on YouTube and you can see me talking on 125th Street. You can see me talking outside the Teresa Hotel. I've spent my life in the middle of what's going on, could be called the front line. But there are many people that went through my age group that stayed on the outskirts of it. And they don't know what happened on the inside. And so we all have to have mer for each other. We have to have unconditional love, a higher type of love that allows us, some of us, to be able to go beyond just those emotions that we feel. Because they got us real emotional. Because they've done so much emotional stuff to us. We act very emotional. And so what we have to do is, as elder to young, and again, going back to what I said, I think one thing that I truly believe is I appreciate is I've always been around young people, so I watched these changes, okay? I watched how rap music left the mouth of Gil Scott-Heron and Nikki Giovanni and Sonia Sanchez and the Last Poets. I watched how that left those mouths and they went into mouths that took words and put them into another type of arena. I also watched those who would wish to oppress us control that music and how they would control it in a way that it would create an antagonistic relationship between us as a people, where we no longer consider our women Kemet, Neset, Warets. They are now bees and thoths and all the other names that we have for them. And we've seen them buy out some of our people to be able to present themselves that way and to have sisters believe that if they dress a certain way or they act a certain way, that will draw attention to them, not realizing that your beauty alone attracts.
That's right.
Your melanin attracts alone. That's an attraction. And so we have got to have some deep conversations from elder to younger. Yeah. And that's why I so appreciate your extending this invitation to me to be able to speak to that generation of people, to help them understand that, it's all right. We just got to work some things out.
That's right.
But it's going to be all right.
Yeah.
And it's going to be all right for our young people. But I've got good news and I've got bad news. The good news is we all going to make it to the promised land. The bad news is a lot of us ain't gonna make it. Okay? Because the way in which some of us have interpreted the lives that we're living and what our goals are. You know, if you get caught up in AI as artificial intelligence and don't get caught up as ancestral intelligence, there's going to be whole groups of people that can help you that you ain't going to go to. You're going to go to the computer for your answers as opposed to sitting down and going within to get those answers.
Yes, sir.
You're going to live your life looking for love in all the wrong places. And I think that is part of. But like all things, you will resurrect yourself one day. And no matter how this turns out, it's going to be all right. We just got to work at it.
Come on. Yes, sir. Baba, you have a brand new book. Talk about melanin.
Yes.
Carbon.
Yes.
Genetics is so fascinating, right? We
Yeah.
have so many people, you know, who we come from, right? Our children grow up in school thinking that, hey, genetically, I should only be good at basketball or football or sports. But in the classroom, science, math, reading, that's not for me. Not knowing that we have the pyramids, we have ancient Kush, we have ancient Kemet, we have the Moors. How do we use melanin, our genetics, to tap back into building pyramids again, getting back into engineering, into science, mathematics as well?
You know, it's very interesting. Or if Heru is there. My latest book is titled Carbon Before Melanin.
Right.
And that book is in part of the series of books that I'm writing.
Right.
And I remember Dr. Sebi. I was going to Dr. Sebi since about 1988. And thank you.
Bluetooth disconnected.
And I went and I invited him to come to one of my presentations on melanin. And he came. And when I went back to the institute, the Health Institute, Dr. Sebi, for those that may not know, he's a herbalist. He's an African biomineralist. And he has a regimen of the way in which we should be living and the things that we should be eating and the herbs that we should be taking. And Dr. Sebi said, you know, you always talk about melanin, but it was carbon before melanin.
Right.
And so from his advice and from what he said, I began to study melanin from a carbon perspective. Carbon is the atom and melanin is a molecule. And there's a chapter that I dedicate to Dr. Sebi, chapter 1, in fact, that deals with carbon. Because I understand now what he meant when he said that about melanin. Melanin is a molecule. It is a molecule that is what's considered to be the mothership molecule. Carbon, you have 4 atoms basically that make up your body. Hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon. You can put 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen, and you can get water, H2O. You can put 2 parts hydrogen, 2 parts oxygen, and get hydrogen peroxide. You can do the same thing with nitrogen, and you can do it with oxygen. But you can put no more than 4 atoms together to create a molecule. Nitrogen, oxygen, hydrogen. Those 3 atoms, you can only put no more than 4 of them at any point in time in order to create a molecule. But with the introduction of carbon, you create the millions, if not billions, of molecules that exist. Carbon is the mothership. What Dr. Sebi meant was when carbon is introduced to any of the other atoms, it automatically not only can connect with itself, it can connect with the other 3 atoms in multiple ways. So when he said that it was carbon before melanin, what he was saying is that the way in which you got melanin, because in the book I have one of the pictures of melanin, because melanin takes many forms. It's really quite a situation. Melanin is the type of molecule that can manifest itself. And also, you could have the beginnings of an illness Melanin can come in and heal you, and you don't even know that you might have gotten cancer. It can heal you. It's a doctor within you. It controls the very nature of all things. And melanin is not just in humans, it's in the water, it's in rocks, it's in everything, because carbon is what organizes everything. Because the only difference between myself and this couch and the pillow and Brother Caleb and the chair you're sitting in and the microphone we're talking in is the composition of the molecules. Right. But we're all made up of the same stuff, but in different ways that carbon has connected us. And once carbon is introduced, whatever it is becomes organic. Melanin, carbon, is what creates organic life. Okay? Whatever is living, it lives because of carbon. And it's important for us to understand what melanin is. I taught melanin to my students in school. And the way in which I did it was, I went to a presentation. Our brother, Dr. Richard King, the melanist, psychiatrist, was doing a presentation. And Dr. King this is 1981. Dr. King was teaching a class on melanin. And I had heard melanin spoken of once before. Frances Cress Welsing, back in the 70s. She was talking about melanin. And when she was talking about melanin, that wasn't her topic. She was actually talking about HIV and AIDS back in the 70s. That was the theme of what she was talking about. But because of the nature of what she was talking about, I really didn't pay attention to melanin, but I heard the word, I remembered. Well, when Richard King came, his topic was on melanin, and he started to drop some knowledge on melanin. And I wasn't quite getting what he was saying, and I think a few other people in the group. And he said to us, oh, okay, brothers and sisters, let me put it to you like this. If you can understand plant photosynthesis, you can understand human photosynthesis. Because chlorophyll is the molecule to the plant, as melanin is the molecule to the human. The chloroplast is the chlorophyllin cell, and melanocyte is the melanin cell. And I said, wow, okay. I got that. Because I was teaching kindergarten. And when I went back to class, and I bought his Xerox copies of what he called the black dot. And I put that away, and I went back to my class, kindergarten class, and I started teaching plant photosynthesis. I had, you get the little milk cartons, and you get the dirt, and you get the seed. And so we started growing plants. But the whole time I was teaching about plant photosynthesis, I was keeping in my mind how I was going to compare it once I started looking at melanin and human photosynthesis. That was the birth of my curriculum, because I began to realize how to blend certain things. So I studied this. After I got the piece on plant photosynthesis, we did our thing. We put our little plants in the window and let them grow, and every day we go check on them and had fun. Then I started studying melanin. This is going into the late 81, going into 82. And then when that started happening, I began to develop the curriculum. And I reached out to Dr. King. I have Dr. King's letter in the book that is confirming and approving that I present this lesson plan. And the way in which I approached teaching it to children was I began by teaching the properties of the sun. That's where you begin, because that's where all this process happens, through the sun. The photosphere, the sunspots, the core, you teach about the sun. And then from the sun, you start to teach plant photosynthesis. And then from plant photosynthesis, you start teaching about human photosynthesis. And the connection that you make between the two is the leaf of the plant can be compared to the skin of a human. And that's what allows me to go into teaching about skin melanin. And then you teach about neuromelanin. or melanin in the brain. Neuromelanin, which is the first melanin, by the way, that happens during embryogenesis. Okay, this is science, family. We're not playing here. Okay, that's why people don't invite me to conferences, because I don't get emotional. When you drop information from a scientific perspective, not from an emotional perspective. Because what I've noticed that when they have invited me different places to do different types of conversations about science or astronomy, they somehow try to get emotional with me, question my abilities, they question my knowledge, my wisdom, and they do it in a way that emotionally you could get tied up in that and get very offended. But see, they can't offend me, because I know more than them. And so I don't punch down. So I deal with it straightforward. I keep talking. And the other thing that they do is they'll either try to out-talk you, over-talk you, or talk through you. Because if you notice, if you just watch them talk, they're constantly, that's what they do. They talk over you, they talk over you, or they'll talk through you. See, with me, I just keep talking. And then I change the voice, my tone in my voice, so that I make the audience listen to me as opposed to them. Because they're so busy trying to knock my voice out, people get interested in what my voice is saying. See, this is all psychological, family. They ain't got it. When I walk into a room, I know I'm making everybody forfeit. Everybody's going to forfeit their stand. And I know that when I walk into the room, because I walk in with the knowledge of science. Science comes from the word scient, which means knowledge. It doesn't mean biology, astronomy. It's become that. But science comes from the word scient. And that's why one of the characteristics of the creator is omniscient, all-knowing. Yeah. So that if we understood melanin, we could understand how to control every facet of our life. Shabaka Stone was the book that precedes Carbon Before Melanin. Okay? Spirituality Before Religions precedes Shabaka Stone. I don't write books because I'm a writer. I write books because I have something to say. And I'm trying to get this information to our people to help us understand what it is that we have to do and what a farce it is out here. This is an illusion out here. They're hoping that they can play that game on your mind. They're playing mind games. Okay? And they don't even really play it that good. It's just that we've bought into their superiority. Right. We've bought into that concept that they got this going on. They don't have it going on. They never did. Everything that they have created has been on our back. And with due respect to everyone who has come to this country and has contributed to the well-being of this country was built by Black Americans. Let's just get that straight. It's like Europeans came over here and stole the house, stole the land from indigenous people. They then stole Africans and brought Africans here, and we built the house. And we furnished most of the rooms. Then they brought immigrants in, and they brought the furniture. But we built the house. We built the rooms, and we built the wealth of this planet. Sure. And the reason why everybody comes to America is because of what Black folk did in America. Yes. It's simple. Everybody say, I come for a better way, a better life. Well, if you come from a better life, it is because of the life that was prepared by Black people who work for free, and we are about to get reparations. We're going to get reparations. The question is not if, the question is when. And what I tell them all the time, the longer it takes to pay, the greater the interest is going to be. Right. The longer we have to wait, the more you're going to pay. And your great-grandchildren will be born and they will despise you for what you left them. to have to pay back. But you gon' pay. And that's just simple like that. And once we get that in our heads and we understand we built this country, there's no more discussion about this. Our brothers and sisters in the English-speaking Caribbean, England owe you. In the French Caribbean, France owe you. In the Spanish Caribbean, Spain owes you. In Brazil, Portugal owes you. Now you go to Africa, Mali, Senegal, the French-speaking African nations, France owes you. Okay? But I got a sad story to tell you. Europe ain't got nothing to pay because they ain't got it.
Yeah, stolen.
Because the only thing they got is us. Yep. So if they're going to pay us what they owe us, they got to pay us. Because when all is said and done, we're going to wipe their whole slate out. And that's just the way it is, family. I'm talking science. I'm not talking emotion. I'm not talking in anger. I'm talking in reality that I face, because we as a people, we have to get our heads on tight enough to understand how it is that we're going to be able to do what we got to do. And while I do know they're going to pay us reparations, I ain't waiting for the payment. Because sometimes you're going to wait too long. Yeah. But somebody going to pay. But melanin is a molecule that is the reason for all of the life systems that exist on the planet. Melanin is a cornerstone. And what I did in the book, this book is a little bit more expensive than my other books. This is $35. It's a little bit more expensive than my other books because I went to all of the great scholars that I knew. And I've got like 72 illustrations in here because I felt that the illustrations were very important. I did not want to get caught up in shortchanging the information for a couple dollars. And some of the illustrations are in color. And color illustrations cost more than black and white. So that's basically, what I had to do. But I have a listing of all of the illustrations. And I have 72 illustrations that are going to show you things that's going to blow your mind. And that's what I wanted to do in this book. Illustrations of showing you where melanin is in every part of your body. If you didn't have melanin in your eyes, you couldn't see. If you didn't have it in your ears, you couldn't hear. If it wasn't in your inner ear, you wouldn't have balance. If it wasn't in your heart, it wouldn't beat. If it wasn't in your blood, it wouldn't circulate. If it wasn't in your respiratory system, you wouldn't breathe. If it wasn't in your nose, you wouldn't smell. If it wasn't in your tongue, you couldn't taste. It's in every organ and gland in your body. It's what makes you function. I went and spoke to a medical school one time. I wasn't talking about melanin. I was talking about the original Africans that were the original Americans. But I asked if I could speak, but it was the medical school that invited me. There was a brother that was an intern, just graduated, and he had followed my work. He invited me to come, so I said, sure, I'll come. So I asked him, I said, look, man, I want you to get me to have a meeting with your students, your medical students in college that are majoring in medicine. I'd like to talk to some of your medical students. I'd like to talk to your interns like you, and I'd like to talk to the doctors. And the director of the program, he was a brother. I'd like to talk to him too. And my first question when we assembled in the room, I said, how many of you have heard of melanin? Some hands went up. Now you're in med school.
Wow.
Some hands went up. Some knew about melanin, particularly the brother that invited me. I said, well, what do you know about it? Well, we're taught that it's a byproduct of a process. I said, okay. It's not a byproduct. It is the very thing that creates the product being produced. Okay? That's how deep it is. And so I told him, I said, well, for you to be in med school and not know melanin is equivalent to a car mechanic not knowing the role of gasoline. You know all the parts of the car. You know how to put it all together. But if you don't put gasoline in the car ain't going nowhere. And that's what most med schools are. That's why they tripped out over COVID-19. Because they didn't understand basic functioning things. It's the two V's. The virus and vaccine. Okay? The virus is nature. I told people, the vaccine is man-made. The vaccine is human. Okay? It's the virus you got to watch. It's like Mom's Mabley used to say, I saw this man walking across the street, and he was looking up at the light, and he was looking up at the light. He walked down the street, got hit by the car. I had to tell him, you a fool. It's the car hit you, not the light. And that's what happened during COVID. Everybody was watching the vaccine, but it was the virus that you had to watch. And it's so bad now that people are still saying you can catch COVID. You can't catch COVID. COVID don't exist no more. For COVID to still exist is equivalent to Hurricane Esther coming through, and the next hurricane that comes through, you say Esther came back. No, Esther didn't come back. Frank came. Every hurricane is different. Every virus is different. And once your body moves, that's what they meant when they said herd something, herd immunity. That once enough people get it, it passes through, and your body automatically creates an immunity to that particular virus. That's not to say that another bad virus can't come through. It's not to say that one that's not that bad won't come through. We'll always have viruses like we'll always have hurricanes. That's nature. Keep your eye on the virus, not the vaccine. But people made money on that vaccine, but that's a whole nother story. There is a part in the book where I show you what melanin looks like in the skin. And that's, to me, of great value. To see it in the skin. They brought it down where they actually took the epidermis and they showed you where melanin is in the skin. This came from a book that I bought years ago. It's called Essential Notions of Black Skin. It was written by a man by the name of Umberto Pierantoni in France. He was not a scientist, so to speak. He was a cosmetologist. And what was happening in the 50s and 60s was that that's when African models and black models came to Europe and started to model clothing. And what they noticed is that when they put the makeup that they put on the non-melanated skin was put on melanated skin, by the time the sister got up on the catwalk, her skin had absorbed the makeup. Wow. It's like nobody put nothing on it. Wow. So then they began to realize, well, wait a minute, that black skin is different from white skin. So then they did research on melanin. Pierantoni wrote a book on it called Essential Notions of Black Skin. That's where I get these pictures from. Because 3/4 of the book dealt with melanin, and 1/4 of the book dealt with the makeup that you can make in order to put on black skin. Okay, so he never wrote the book for melanin. But I had a friend that was a cosmetologist that said, you're always talking about melanin. And she used to get this magazine that would come out. And in the magazine, there was an advertisement for this book. She said, and it was written in French, but you could get an English translation for a price, of which I paid, because I wanted to know about this. So I bought the book, and that's where these pictures come from. It shows you what melanin looks like, 72,000, something like that, about, when you under a microscope. It shows you exactly the difference between when it's in melanated skin and when it's in non-melanated skin, in pale skin. Because it's not even the same as it relates to brothers or sisters who may not have as much melanin as another brother or sister, okay? You're still black. And this is another thing that we got to get over. Because now we got this war going on between us as less melanated or more melanated, and who's better and who. It has nothing to do with that, because melanin is in every organ and gland in your body. Your skin is the largest organ on your body. And so therefore, that's why you have skin melanin. But the most important melanin is neuromelanin. And I have a picture in the book of a blastula, which is when you were conceived, your daddy's sperm fertilized your mommy's egg, and in so doing, it created what's called a zygote. And then the zygote, through mitosis, begins to multiply its cells. 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8. When it situates itself at a certain point, that becomes the blastula. The blastula has 3 parts to it. It has an ectoderm, the outside. It has a mesoderm ring in the middle, and it has an endoderm in the middle. In the inner part. The endoderm is inside. 3 levels. Your ectoderm on the outside is melanin rich. Okay? That is made up of all melanin, because that's what's going to protect that too soon to become fetus human through its life. Your ectoderm, melanin rich, is what is going to turn into the inside the cell itself, and that's what is your brain, your spinal cord, your organs, your glands. Eventually, it'll become your gastrointestinal tract. All born out of black. Every human, no matter what your cultural background is, because there's only one race on the planet, family, and that's the human race. And that human race was conceived, born, nurtured, sustained, educated, civilized in Africa. And then Africans, when they got their show together, then they took it on the road. And they peopled the planet. And as they moved away from the sun and the relationship of the sun, and then the Ice Age came, they had to morph into who we today call what are known as ethnic stocks. There is no white race. White folk is an ethnic stock. Asian people, not a race. It's an ethnic stock. There's a chapter in the book that deals with that. It shows you where we were born, how we tracked, when we went into Europe, when we began to depigment ourselves, what made us depigment ourselves. It shows you the zone of glaciers that cut the northern Africans from the southern Africans, that made them withdraw into caves and to put more clothes on, deny them access of the sun, and the depigmentation process occurred. What was once king, I have a section in the book that talks about hair and the texture of hair. Okay, we all caught up in good hair and bad hair.
Right.
Okay, that doesn't exist. The reason why human beings in the hot climate, why the hair is like that, is because in your sebaceous gland, you have you have packets of what's known as sebum, sebum, which are sebum is an oily, waxy substance, and in this oily, waxy substance, they explode. They open up and they let sebum ride along your hair follicle. As it rides along the hair follicle, it spreads out and lays on your scalp. What it does with your hair is it flattens your hair. That's what kinky hair is. It's flat, okay? And what happens is that it wraps itself around that hair follicle and it kinks it, because that's what's going to become a crown on your head to protect your head from the harmful rays of the sun. It's very simple, okay? And so in doing that, it kinks the hair, but also it protects the scalp from the harmful rays of the sun. Otherwise, you would have gotten scalp cancer. Because as the human being went from its hairy state and began to lose its hair, it had to create a heat loss, because hair is a heat loss system. But when the hair began to go off of this human being, because we had much more hair on our body when we were in the very beginnings of our Australopithecine, okay? And when we began to lose hair, what began to happen, we had to compensate. That's why, it's funny, because when people be talking about black people and monkeys and gorillas, if you shaved a gorilla, it look more like a white man than would look like a black man. And all you got to do is go to a zoo and look under the underarm of a gorilla. Yeah. It's pale. Yep. Polar bears are black. But it's the whiteness of the hair in the polar regions, but the skin is black. The white hair protects the black skin like the black hair protects the pale skin. This is not about superiority or inferiority. I would not want to make us think that we were superior because of this. Dr. King was right. It is the content of your character that makes you who you are. Because I know some melanated people that don't act right.
Thanks.
So if melanin made you all that, you wouldn't be acting like that. So it's obvious you made a choice in life that you're going to live a life that is not the very best way of doing it. So I don't want to ever, and my book does not promote this concept, but I have a section in the book that deals with Punnett Square. We're not talking about superiority and inferiority. We are talking about the dominant gene and the recessive gene. And the melanin gene is dominant, and the recessive gene is recessive. Okay? No matter how you look at it. We teach you with a big B and a little b. It's a square. And I have the square in the book. It's called Punnett Square. I used to teach this in my 6th grade. And the children used to say to me, but Brother Kaba, doesn't that make us superior? I say, no, it doesn't make us superior, but it certainly does make us pretty good. Here's Punnett Square. You make a square, and we teach this, but we teach it with plants. We teach it with animals, but they don't teach it about human beings because they know what they're going to have to tell you if they show the chart that I got here. If you have 2 dominant genes, it's a dominant. Yep. If you have a dominant and a recessive, it's half and half. Yep. When you get to the little b, you got a dominant and a recessive, and then you have 2 recessive. And recessive create recessive. There's no way recessive can create dominant, but dominant can create recessive. That's science. That's not personal. That's not superiority, and it's not inferiority. It's science. When you break it like that, see, they always say, isn't that what we used to study with the plants? No, we ain't talking about plants here. We're talking about humans. See, they had that green plant, and they had that albino plant. I remember one time they taught it with an albino chipmunk and a brown and black chipmunk. I said, no, but put humans up on here, because isn't that the same thing? So this is the story of what it does in terms of Punnett Square. And we teach this in school. We just don't use it with humans. When you develop an understanding of what it is that you're dealing with family, and you come from a scientific perspective, and you tone down your emotions. Emotions ain't bad. There's 2 types of emotion. There is a negative emotion, which is fueled by anger, and there's a positive emotion that's fueled by passion. I'm a passionate person, not angry. But I'm very passionate about what I do. And I know when I wrote this book, I was writing this book to continue the story of what the Bible is trying to tell you when they tell you about Noah and his family. Yeah. Okay? Noah and his family is the story of Melanin. And it's a powerful story, family. I published that book on my father's birthday this past year, March 12th, 2024. And I remember as I was developing, this is the book that I wrote, Spirituality Before Religions. When I decided to come to Atlanta, what I decided to do was to visit 3 different places. I'm not talking about Tuskegee, I'm talking about 3 different places. This was going to be the first place where I came to be with the family in this way. On Friday, I'm going to be at Medu Bookstore. Yeah. And I'm going to take this story to the next level. And then when I get, then I'm speaking at JB's Records, what is that, 898 Oak Street. I'm going to take it to the next level. Because what I have to say, like I tell you, I have a lot to say. There's no way that I could ever say it all in here. There's just so much that we need to understand about who we are as a people and how great we are as a people. Yes, sir. And what we've done. I'm telling you, family, we are far greater than we believe. And the evidence that we don't know how great we are is because we wouldn't be acting this way if we really knew. I know that for a fact because I know the potential. When you understand how great you, and I'm not speaking individually now, I'm speaking about as a group, okay? When you know and understand what you've achieved in your lifetime, and when you go from place to place and you meet people and you have experiences, that's why Richard Pryor said that you don't get to be an elder by being a fool. Because what he was saying is that that when you have experienced something long enough and you see certain things about how things are going, you begin to realize certain things about things. And what I know beyond a shadow of a doubt is that each and every one of us is a phenomenal human being. that's been given a divine gift. You were given a gift before you were born. Remember we talked about the people that sidestepped to let you come through? They sidestepped because it was your time. It was your time to fulfill your gift on this planet, the way in which only you can do it. Competing with each other, that's just not happening, family. Compete with yourself. When I got back from Tuskegee yesterday and I was washing up to go to bed and I was looking in the mirror, as I was going to bed, I said, you know, I'm a better person today, right now, than I was when I woke up this morning. And I asked the Creator within me, as I was watching myself in the mirror, to make me a better person tomorrow than's going to bed tonight. And there was something that I knew. I knew that Brother Caleb, Sister Sid, the team that works with them, and all of you here, would make my day today worth living. I knew that. And when I go to bed tonight, I guarantee you, I'm going to tell myself, I'm going to talk to the Creator, I'm going to pray, and I'm going to say thank you for allowing me to have this opportunity with my brother Caleb and Sister Sid and my brother King and Queen and all the others, my wife and everybody, my son, my grandchildren, everybody. Thank you. Because tomorrow I'm going to wake up a better person that's going to bed tonight. I don't compete with anybody else. I compete with me. I'm competing to become a better person than I am. But cooperatively, when you rise, I rise. When the tide rises, all boats, even small ones, rise. And this is what our African ancestors taught us. This is what our ancestors on the plantation taught us. And if ever you think you're having a hard time, just ask your ancestors. Because what they went through, nothing compared to what we're going through. We got it made compared to what they went through. And yet something brought them through that. And even if it's Christianity or Islam, whatever it is, I bless it. Yeah. Because if they didn't have that, we might not be here. That's right. And so we celebrate our life, but at the same time, family, we're careful with what we have to do. Don't waste your time. That's why we say pay attention. Because the attention that you pay costs. Mm-hmm. Don't waste it. Ain't never going to be another day like today. Enjoy it. But at the same time, build what you got to build. Find your divine purpose. People say, well, you know, particularly young people say, well, Brother Kyle, how do I know what my divine purpose is? I ask them, well, what would you do for free? Mm-hmm. Because chances are whatever you would do for free, you do because you love. And because you love it, you're going to do it good. And because you do it so good, other people are going to like how you do it, and they're going to ask you to do it, and that's your divine gift, whatever it may be. Can any of you guess what my gift is? I would do it for free. Yeah. I like getting paid. That helps my research and what I'm doing, but I would do it for free. Because the day you start charging for your gift is the day you're going to lose the power of the gift. Because then the reason why you're doing it is for material purposes and not for the purposes that you were put on this planet for.
That's right, Baba. You have been truly phenomenal this entire conversation. Very last question, and then after that, Q&A.
Yeah.
My generation, especially now, right? Times it can be crazy for us, right? Yeah. Everything is super expensive, whether it's gas, living. The job market is terrible for young people too. You have kids who are depressed, killing themselves in school, getting bullied, getting pressured. You have people who scroll on social media and they see people living. And those same people who scrolling, they'll feel down like, man, I'm not doing enough. So instead, how can we, or I would say rather, what words of encouragement would you have for my generation right now?
My words of encouragement, more importantly than anything else, is to know that things are going to get better.
Right.
Let that be your future look.
Yeah.
The question is, what do you do between there and now to get there?
Right.
And what you got to do is keep on keeping on,
Yeah.
realizing it ain't over till you win.
Right.
And that what becomes important for your generation is the same thing that was important for my generation, same thing important for my father's generation, same thing that was important for every generation, even going back into the ancient world. And the question is, where do you see our children in the year 2124? Everything that we should be doing should be leaning towards making our children better than us.
Right.
And by better, every generation does its best. Okay? Dr. Clark did his best in his generation. There is information out here now that he did not have,
Right.
but it was his existence that inspired people to bring that into existence. So when I say better, what I mean is not so much person to person better. What I'm talking about is the ability for you to be able to take what you have and to sit or stand on the shoulders of those that came before you in order to see a future that they didn't see because they were where they are. Now you're where you are. You can see further down the road.
Exactly.
So everything we do has to be for our children. And I believe we should teach to a creator's mind. So whatever you do, how could you do it better? When you're thinking about doing things, how can you do it better? How can you take whatever you do? You work for FedEx, you work for post office, you work in laundry, okay? Whatever you do, on whatever station of life you are, how can you do it better? Think as it relates to living in the zone of development. I taught a class on Malcolm X for 11 years in college. And I said to myself, okay, what do I tell students about this man that books haven't said, that movies haven't said, that people haven't taught? How could I do it? So I broke it up into modules. And one of the modules that I had was to define 3 different types of intellect. You have a large intellect, which means you have a lot of information. You have a ready intellect, which means that you are very quick with your thoughts and your ideas. You can get back real quick. It's ready, okay? Your neurons are ignited and they're fired up. And you have a clear and concise intellect, which means that when you talk to people, you could be talking to a 5-year-old and you can talk to a 50-year-old, and both of them will walk away understanding exactly what you were saying. Clear and concise, your vocabulary that you use, the way in which you use it. One of the things that I teach when I do staff development with teaching is to talk about 2 parts of the brain that are very important to understand. Right now, I'm using a particular part of the brain. Right now, you're using a particular part of your brain. When I stop talking and you start asking questions, you're going to start to use that part of the brain that I'm using now, and I'm going to use that part of the brain that you're using now. The part of the brain that I'm using right now is in the Broca system, B-R-O-C-A. It's in your frontal lobe of your brain. It's where speech production comes from. With all of the knowledge and everything that I'm saying tonight and all the things that I'm trying to get to transmit or to share with you, is coming through a portal that I'm producing words that are attempting to express a collective understanding. You're using what is called the Wernicke system of the brain, W-E-R-N-I-C-K-E, the Wernicke system of the brain that's located in your temporal lobe, which is back and underneath what's called your occipital lobe, O-C-C-I-P-T-A-L. I'm a teacher, I got to spell. Because for those who are taking notes and want to take further, I want you to be able to, or those that might be watching this, viewing this at a later time or sometime, I want you to be able to know how to spell what it is that I'm saying, for further knowledge. That is where your speech comprehension is coming from. Everything that I'm saying to you is coming from Broca. Everything that you're understanding with me is coming from your Wernicke system. And so how many times have you been in a room with somebody that have spoken for about a half hour, and at the end you say, what was he talking about? And then there are other people that might just say a phrase to you and you say, wow, that opens up a whole nother way of looking at the world. Okay? That is your intellect in terms of your large intellect, because you don't have to have a large intellect. There's people don't have a large intellect, but they're real clear and concise. They may have a small intellect, but everything they say, you understand exactly what they're talking about. Okay? And a ready intellect. Some people don't have a ready intellect. So you don't have to have all three intellects, but Malcolm did. Malcolm had a large intellect, he had a ready intellect, and he had a clear and concise intellect. And what I was attempting to teach my students about Malcolm X, but more importantly, the first thing I asked my students to remember, this course is not just for you to learn about Malcolm X. It is for you to find the spirit that was in Malcolm. Where is it in you?
Right.
Where is that spirit? Because, Brother Caleb, we know what to do economically.
Yeah.
Dr. Claude Anderson done dropped it.
That's right.
George Fraser dropped it. Karen Hunter dropped it.
Yeah.
We can go through all the different economists that have dropped what we got to do.
For sure.
So what's stopping us? Historically, we already know and have a good idea about history, at least the direction that we ought to be going. Education, we know. Okay. Labor, we know.
Yeah.
Politics, we clearly understand. What's stopping us? What is stopping us? That, I believe, is psychological. There's nothing wrong with black people. Something happened to black people. Black folk ain't got a problem. White folk got a problem. Black folk problem is the fact that white folk got a problem. And we are in the throes of having to deal with their problem. What's going on right here politically? This ain't our problem right here. We've been sitting here telling them this for a long time. And if you want it in written form, just get a book called The Fall of America by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He'll tell you everything that's happening now. He told you that years ago, before many of us were born. He dropped it on us. Marcus Garvey dropped it on us. Booker T. Washington dropped it on us. What Booker T. Washington was doing with George Washington Carver up on that second floor, what George Washington Carver was doing in nature, had we been able to grapple with that and bring that together, we would not be fighting over food today. We would not be wanting to wonder how it is that we're going to eat. Booker T. Washington created an institute, which is now a university, that taught people every aspect of survival. See, that's what Booker T. Washington was about. Survival. All this other stuff and this battle between Du Bois and him, which I think is fictitious. I don't think it really was a battle. They made it a battle, but it really wasn't. About the talented 10th. I wish he had just said the scientific 10th instead of the talented 10th. Because farmers are some of the greatest scientific minds on the planet. Farmers are brilliant. And they're talented. But when you put talented in front of 10th, you give the impression that only college students can be intelligent.
That's right.
I've learned more from a brother nodding out on heroin from the corner of 169th Street and 3rd Avenue than I have lecturing at Harvard.
Sure.
I'm not impressed with your college degree. I've got one. But that ain't make me what I am. Well, everything that I said to you tonight, I didn't learn in college. I tell people I got my PhD. I've got 2 master's degrees. I only got them because I had to for my job, because I wanted to get paid. And I wanted to retire with a retirement fund.
Right.
Okay? So I went for my master's for that reason. I tell you, 2 black professors taught me something. Out of all of the courses I took in my 2 masters, I learned special ed from a brilliant brother that taught me Introduction to Special Ed, and another brother taught a class called IEP, which is, for those that know special ed, is your individualized educational plan, where it taught you how to individualize a teaching plan for students that needed special help. The one thing I learned out of that class is that we all need special ed.
Man.
Okay? I need special ed. Okay? And so, but to go back to your question, because I want to stay focused on that. I want to share with you that I have, if I were a child in today's world, I would be in special ed. Because I have something special that I go through. Anybody know what that might be? Can anybody guess? Now, this is going to answer your question from a point of view that I think is so important, but it's only when you find your weakness that you find your strength. And so if I don't tell this story, I'm not really going to fully answer your question, because I want people to understand something real clear. Does anybody have an idea what my challenge in my life is? I have a very serious challenge. Okay, I'll tell you because it's going to take time. I stutter and stammer profusely. Now, did you hear me stutter and stammer tonight? But I did. But you didn't catch it because I've learned how to overcome that. And we all have that. We all have shortcomings that we try to play off. Okay? We all have those areas in life that we question ourselves. The reason why I would have been in special ed is not because I stutter. The reason why I would have been in special ed was because people laughed at me growing up. Wow. And I shut down for 4 years of my life, and I became what's called a selective mute. Wow. I wouldn't talk. Even at the threat of failing, at the threat of flailing by the nuns, I wouldn't talk under any circumstance. And the nuns wanted to put me in, at the time they didn't have special ed, they had CRMD, the class for the mentally retarded. And my mother said, "Sister, ain't nothing retarded about my son. In fact, I wish some of the inflection, some of the things you telling me about he shut up, I wish he'd shut up at home. Because the boy just keep talking all day long." The point that I'm making is that we all have shortcomings. Right. And one of the things as a people that younger generation has to understand is that with all of the bashing on social media, I could only imagine what people would have said about me if I was in this generation. Okay, I can only imagine the jokes that they would have made of me because I know what it was to be so hurt that I shut down. I wouldn't talk. For 4 years, I wouldn't talk in public. I wouldn't talk. Wow. And as Black people, we're all put out in these situations where they put upon us a situation where some of the areas in us that are our weakest points are exaggerated because of the pain that we go through, because of the things that we put each other through, because we're all hurt. And hurt people hurt people. Yep. So if you hurting, you'll hurt less, you think, if you hurt me. And so this is what we do to each other. Okay? We make our sisters feel a certain way about their physical appearance. Yep. But you know, in reality, they did a research paper on Black women. And what they found is that 90% of Black women do not suffer from feelings of insecurity or inferiority. And they found that white women, only 10% don't suffer from those feelings. Because even when the sister walked by, brother got something to say to her, you're complimenting her. She may not want to hear it that way, but you say, you so fine. You know, okay, can I talk to you? That's a compliment. You may not want to be bothered with it. But in their community, they're put down by their men. See, we don't know that because we're not in their community. We don't hear what they say to each other. And so my message to us as a people is, let's start looking more to us to get ourselves together and get up off each other. I understand why you're doing it. And for those of us who could be hurt by this type of conversation, back up off it. Because these are all isms that create schisms. We're living in a world where the major mindset is inferior and lives insecurely. And we as Black folk have morphed into that. Because although you may have avoided Dracula throughout the entire movie, if he gets you in the last 5 minutes, you're going to start acting like a vampire. And what we've done is we've morphed. They have tethered themselves onto us, and we have tethered ourselves onto their worst self. They tethered on our best self and stole everything we had, because the only thing white folk invented was the patent office and the Xerox machine. And we're living in very interesting times because their time is up. Just about had it. Okay? And they did it themselves. We didn't even have to do it to themselves. They did it to themselves. You talk about the Willie Lynch syndrome? They are the Willie Lynch syndrome. They're attacking each other under all different types of circumstances. But family, if that is true, what are we doing? If the house should fall, are we prepared to have our own economic system, our own educational system? Are we prepared to have our own nutritional and health regimen? Are we in a place where we have the ability to hire our own to work? Are we in a position where we can politically govern ourselves? We're still arguing about whether we should vote or not. It's not about that. You have a now. I'm not going to say what I think or what I know because I don't know, but y'all have a black mayor. Okay, he wouldn't be there if it wasn't for you. Okay, if you didn't vote, he wouldn't be there.
Right.
See, we have to understand politics doesn't work by them liking you. Politicians don't like you. They use you. The trick is we're caught up trying to be liked. Okay? No. I am going to use you. Okay? I'm going to have you ever been in a situation where you're working with somebody, a person of another culture, and wow, you get along real well with them, or you talk and you even show pictures of your family and sit. Sometime when it's raining, you even eat lunch inside together and talk. But you go outside for lunch, and all of a sudden, you're walking, you see them, you're ready to speak to them, they pass you like they don't even know you. And we get very offended. But that's their nature. Dr. Edwin Nichols teaches us about the worldview of the three different major groups, the African, the European, and the Asian. The African worldview builds their society, builds their life systems around person-to-person interactions. And it's in the person-to-person interactions that creates the society. The Asian worldview is from person to group. Because when they were developing themselves, they had to depend on the group for their survival. Africans did not. Africans were self-sufficient. What they got from each other was that bond that happened between people. But the Asian, as they developed in the northeastern section of the Ice Age, they had to depend on the group for survival. So they developed person to group. I'm not talking about anything good or bad, right or wrong, anything like that. I'm just talking about how people develop themselves. The European, because of the scarcity of what they had, they did not depend on the group. They depended on person to material wealth. So they objectify everything. It's just like what you're seeing now. Everybody talking about quid pro quo. Everybody's talking about transactional. Okay, what can you do for me? Okay, it's not about who you are to me. It's what can you do for me? Okay, and under those circumstances, we then develop our relationship with you. So they objectify you. So when you're in the office with them, when you're in their experience, now I'm not speaking about everybody because only Sith Lords speak in absolutes. So I'm not speaking in an absolute, but I'm speaking about the group. The group is this way. When they see you in the office, although they speak to you, you're like sitting in a chair. You're there and I'm going to talk to you. The chair, I'm going to sit on you. The table, I'm going to work on you. They objectify you. So when they see you in the street and they walk by you, it's because they've objectified you. It's like if they walk past the chair, they would say, oh, hey, chair, what's up? Or hey, table, what? They don't see you as a human being. They see you as an object. Even the man sees his woman as an object. They objectify, and even she sees him as an object. They objectify each other because of the way in which their culture brought them through the Ice Age. Right. What mattered is, what can you do for me? Yep. You got some food for me?
Can you provide?
Can you provide for me?
Right.
Okay? This is what it is. Sisters and brothers and all the relationships in between develop their relationships outside of a love for the human interaction. Asians is the love between the group and the person. That's why they work so well like that in groups. That's why they really do well in school, because there's a brother in California that came to realize that Black and Hispanic students in this particular college didn't do well. And he noticed that Asian and European students did well. And out of the Asian and European students, the Asians did better than the Europeans. And what he did is that he studied the difference between before he wrote his PhD paper, and he came to realize the reason why Asians and Europeans do so good is because they study in groups. African American and Hispanic students study alone, individually. Okay. And so when you are in a group, and see what he did was, in finding this out, he started to put Black and Hispanic students in groups. Because if you put 5 people together, somebody knows the answer to everything.
That's right.
Okay? Somebody may be math, somebody may be science, somebody may be art, somebody may be music, but somebody got the answer for everything in the group. So therefore, in that setting, everybody's going to get the right answer. That's what the Asians did. They were able to study in group. No gossip. Okay? We ain't here to be talking about is she weavable or unbelievable. We're here to study. So there was no gossip. It was just conversation about the topic at hand. Afterwards, they had fun. Right. But while they were studying, there was no games. You studied in groups. And so what is happening now is that as you develop your groups, as you develop your study groups and bring things together, you then, as Black folk, we have to move back into understanding how our worldview is. Last thing before we end this segment. I come from the Motown sound. My development in music, my buying records, my first record I ever bought was Papa's Got a Brand New Bag by James Brown, 1965. Wow. First 45 I ever bought, James Brown. It went on through the years that the Motown sound came, Aretha Franklin, okay, Jackson 5, okay, this is before Michael Jackson. This is Jackson 5, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, the Motown sound. Y'all know what I'm talking about, I hope. Well, what made that so powerful is they were groups that sang in harmony. That's how we are as a people. We are a harmonic people. We work best together. So when they divide and conquer us, we don't work together and we cannot survive. We cannot succeed. So go back to your answer, we need to work together. We need to find a way to work together with each other, okay? And as we work together, what began to happen, check this out, the fall of Motown, if you want to call it that, came when Smokey left the Miracles, when David Ruffin and Dennis Edwards left the Temptations, Eddie Kendricks left the Temptations, okay? When Patti LaBelle left the Bluebells. And what began to happen is that they began to individualize. When Michael Jackson left the Jackson 5, started his downfall. Man. I'm just telling you how I feel. I'm telling you what I watched. Because I knew that harmonic sound of the Temptations, okay? My Girl, okay? You know, I mean, the sound, I Can't Help Myself by the Four. The only group that didn't follow that was the Four Tops. Levi Stubbs refused to leave the Four Tops. And they stayed together. Brother got ill, but they stayed together the entire time that they performed. When they started to take the lead singer out, that was the downfall of Motown. Because we naturally, even when you look at my brother, Lionel Richie, when he left the Commodores, okay, Lionel Richie had a career, but what happened to the Commodores? You see? When you have a talent, sometimes people can persuade you to leave, to make you weak. But your strength is in the group. No matter how much attention they may put on you individually, your strength, what made Smokey was the Miracles. What made David Ruffin was the Temptations. It was, and then the way we dressed, the way we danced, everything was in harmony. We lived Ma'at through music. But when they take you out, when they convince you, you special. Why are you hanging around with them? You could make all the money. You don't have to worry about them. All that began to impact the Motown sound. And that is why, as unfortunate as it is, Motown should be in another stratosphere by now as a musical industry. Why don't you hear about them? Why aren't they produced? Look at Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder. Okay? Genius. When they had the Motown reviews, when the Motown would come through, Temptations, Four Tops, Martha and the Vandellas, Diana Ross and the Supremes. You see, in the beginning, it was just the name of the group. But then the singer became Diana Ross and the Supremes, okay? And they began Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. In the beginning, it was just the Miracles, the group, because that's how we acted. And it was the harmony, going back to the person-to-person relationship, where you had Brother Melvin in the Temptations, sound like his voice was going through the floor. Melvin Franklin. He had that deep voice. When that brother started talking to everybody, but that's what it was with us. But we were able to be persuaded by forces outside of ourselves. Leave them. You go on your own. We're going to make you famous. Yeah. Motown fell. As all things fall when we don't see in the group the value of the group. Harmony in the group. Okay? You hanging out with your boys, have harmony. If somebody step out of line, put them in check. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. Okay? Let's come together. Come on, brother. That ain't how we operate here. Let's come together. What's your problem? Let's work it out. Okay? And one day, the Bloods are going to look at the Crips, and they're going to ask a fundamental question. Are you my real enemy? And when they answer that question, part of our problem in security is going to be solved. When they ask that question. So for your generation, I respect you. I honor you. I mean, I love you. And I think that you are doing everything that is the best that you have. But I ask my generation, what did you do to continue to go back to them, to continue to talk to them? I spent my life with the children. That's what my contribution back to our community was, to stick with them, to talk to them, to let them know that it's all right, that you have somebody that is safe. You can be safe in my presence, okay? I had kindergarten children. I tell people all the time, I could write a book on kindergarten, my 5-year-old kindergarten children to say, you look like my daddy. I wish you were my daddy. Can I call you daddy? And my response always was, I am your daddy. Because in an African tradition, every adult male is Baba and every adult female is Mama. I didn't bring you into this world. But when you're in my presence, I am responsible for your well-being. Right. So I'm all that. So if you choose that you'd like to share with me ideas or aspirations or things that you'd like to talk about, things that trouble you, I'm here for you. If you don't, that's cool too. But my question is, whenever adults ask me, they say to me, what's wrong with the children? They say, what's wrong with the children? And what I do, I'm gonna see if I can find it. What I do when they say what's wrong with the children, I always pull out a mirror. You're the problem, because you didn't do what you were supposed to do when they were children. Were you there for them? Were you there to talk to them? Were you there to give them encouragement? People build nations. Families build dynasties. Nations rise and fall, but dynasties last forever. You ain't gonna build a dynasty on a baby daddy. It ain't gonna happen that way. No matter how we look at it, no matter how we want to, I understand what we've all been through. Papa may have been a rolling stone, but somewhere along the line, you got to stop rolling. You either continue the problem or you put an end to the problem. And the bottom line is that the reason why we know the pyramids today is because of the families that did that. Right. Not the individuals. The individuals are in the family, but we know about them because of their dynasties. They built stuff forever, and we're still talking about them. And that's what we need to do. We need to start to think like that. So, just keep on keeping on. Your generation doesn't keep on keeping on. You're either going to continue the cycle or you're going to break the cycle. Break the cycle. Break the cycle in order for you to do what you got to do. You got it. You don't have to get it. You got it. Power is not something you have. Power is something that you do. Power is not something that is in your hand. It's something that you wield from your hand, that you do. This is power. Black power. Melanin power. Okay? When we was going around telling people black is beautiful, it was a good thing, but we didn't really know what it was. Because black is not only beautiful, black is the only color that exists. Everything comes out of the black. Everything comes out of the black. And the evidence of it, when I taught kindergarten, I would have my students, we would do the 8 primary colors. We would take the red and we draw a line. And then I say, okay, now we're going to take the orange over the red line, draw a line in orange, and then yellow, and then green, and then blue, and then indigo again, because indigo is the only color that appears twice in the rainbow. It's the thickest of the colors of the rainbow. And then purple. And then my question was to the children, what color line do you have? It's black. Black is the collection of all color, and white is the absence of color. We got this. You've got this. What you gonna do with it? I'm taking away all excuses for what we can't do. Because if our ancestors could have done it with what they had, if I dream that I have it bad, I wake up and apologize for even thinking that in my dream. We got it pretty good compared. And everything that we have, they manifested for us. Everything that we have, they did it for us. And the only thing that we can do is prepare those yet to be born. I don't pay back. Our ancestors did what they did for me. So I'm not paying them back for what they did for me. I pay forward. Last thing I'm going to say, I know I said that at least 3 times already. Dr. Clark, I was with Dr. Clark one time, and I told Dr. Clark, I said, Dr. Clark, I could never repay you for what you've done for me, through these years. And he said, you're right, Booker T, because you ain't got that much money. But he said, what you can do is you can repay me by doing for others what I've done for you. And so every chance that I get like this kind of fellowship, I appreciate it because it gives me a chance to thank Dr. Clark for what he did for me, because I am now paying forward to future generations as to what it is that we need to do as a people. We can do this. We're doing it as we speak.
Yes, sir. Baba, thank you so much.
My brother.
That was another classic session. We appreciate you greatly. Shout out to every single person, man, who showed up. DL, thank you deeply. Derek, Griot, of course. Hey, Rue, Zay, King in the back. Y'all make sure, get this, man, some great water, live alkaline water. So, afterwards, make sure to mix, mingle, talk to Dr. Kaba as well, ask your questions, talk to each other, meet some people, man. It's amazing people in this room tonight. So thank y'all so much. Dr. Kaba, again, thank you greatly.
No doubt.
And it's just the beginning. But
no doubt.
Man, if we can, y'all, let's just give them a hand, please. Thank y'all. Thank y'all.
Did anybody have any questions that
Any
they want?
Any questions that anybody has for Dr. Kaba?
I want to purchase some of the books.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to purchase some of the books.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we'll pull them out.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That goes for you.
And what's good is that I brought all of them now. So as the days go on and I go to different places, like I say, I'll be at Meadow Books on Friday in the mall, and then I'll be at JB's Records on Saturday. And we'll develop this conversation on various levels. But this I felt was like a gathering like this was like very impersonal. It was just comfortable to just sit and talk and have conversations and just get this to the point, particularly with our younger generations and all those that are aspiring to to do certain things. So we're definitely going to make this happen.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any more questions? Anybody would like to ask? All right, I got you.
I have like a longer question. I don't know if I need to offline or ask the question offline or wait until another time.
Get it while the getting is good, brother.
Okay. I'm nervous. No, I'm not gonna ask that. I'm not gonna ask.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Hey, you can. Yeah, you
It kind
can.
of runs contrary to what a lot of not contrary. It's just a okay. You can ask. So David Banner has the God box. It took me a long time to like understand etymology until I understood that what that verse meant was that Ethiopian was like land of the burnt skin, and that was how like they identified them. So Ethiopia is another word for Africa, right? But my real question is, do you really think it's going to be quote unquote black people that come up out of this? Because for me, it just doesn't make sense. The more I like do the research, like Moors, that's what they called us. Nigga, that's what they called. Negro, that's what they called us. Ethiopian, that's what they called us. Because if I'm Fulani, you Dogon, and she's Ashanti, I might have a cousin that's darker than you, and my mom might be lighter than him. So the black coloring thing just doesn't really.
Yeah. Okay. I get a sense of what you're saying in terms of the word black and what it means, and I've heard 4 different reasons why we shouldn't call ourselves black. I understand that also. My thing is, I'm talking to the masses of our people, so you have to know your audience and who you're talking to. And I've often said, I don't care if you call yourself a Moor, if you call yourself Hebrew Israelite, if you're a Christian, if you're Muslim, you belong to the Nation of Islam, or if you're Orthodox. It doesn't make a difference to me if you call yourself black. The great majority of our people understand and refer to the concept of black. And so when you choose your audience that you're talking to, you use the word that would bring the most of them together. When a question like yours comes up, I recognize that concept. You see, we never thought like this in the ancient world. We never used these kinds of words. Oh yeah, we could have been Fulani, and we could have been Dogon, we could have been from various different places. But the reality of it is we knew that we were all human beings. So when we spoke to each other as human beings. So we didn't get caught up. We're tripping. There's no way we could ever even solve our problems if we're still tripping over what we're calling ourselves. You see? And so it doesn't make a difference what you call yourself. Okay? If you call yourself black, that's fine. You call yourself Negro, that's fine. You call yourself Nick, that's fine. Ethiopian, Moor, that's fine. I don't care. As long as you know that when I'm talking to you. That's what's important to me. And we get caught up in all these little things that stop us from the big things. Because if you can't get past that, how are you going to get past the real issues? You can't even come together when you separate yourself. And the purpose behind Fulani, House of Fulani, Yoruba, Igbo, Ghanaian, Akan. If you go through all of the different groups, Tukala, you could go through those nation states were built on geographic boundaries. And there was a reason why they had a name like that. And they were based on, like your northern boundary might have been a river. Your eastern boundary might have been a mountain range. Your southern boundary might have been a coast. Your other boundary might have been a forest. So that everybody that lived within that was a nation that had a name for themselves. And then on the other side of the forest, they might have another nation with another type of name. So that when they met, they never argued over like where they from like that. The ancient world never went through that. This has only come very recently, I'd say starting maybe 2000 BC, where when the Indo-European, in terms of the xenophobia, the idea of the fear of the foreign, that they started creating boundaries that were artificial. Like when they carved up Africa during the Berlin Conference, they carved it up over economic reasons, for political reasons, for wealth. It had nothing to do with a natural boundary. When you go into Ethiopia, they separated Kenya from Ethiopia, and on the northern side of when you get into the southern part of Ethiopia, there's a people known as the Omo people, OMO, because of the Omo River. Then you have on the northern side of Kenya, you have the Omo people, same people. But because Europe divided that British from Ethiopia, you have two people. It's like if somebody came in here, we're all related. Somebody came in here and created a dividing line that would come straight through right behind me and would end here. And then everybody over here is speaking one language, everybody over here is speaking another language, but we're all family. They separated us. And so this idea of, I personally don't think that Africans had a word for the continent. I've heard people say Alkebulan, okay. Some people say Africa, okay. I think that African people are nation bound. That they think from a philosophy of the nation, like that geographic boundary. They don't think in terms of the larger area because they saw themselves, people to people, they saw themselves as nations, not as continent. Europeans created the concept of continents because they wanted to control and contain and dominate the world. So they created that, but that didn't exist amongst us. And so now if you transfer your question and your thoughts as to what you were saying, now we're at a point now where we're looking at, some of us say we're black. No, don't say you're black, you're a Moor. No, you're not a Moor, I'm a Hebrew Israelite. Oh, no, I'm not a Hebrew Israelite, I'm a nigger. Okay, no, I'm not a nigger, I'm a Negro. Okay, no, I'm colored, I'm black. We're the only people they divide. White folks say I'm white because they know how to come together with a situation. But as long as we're divided, then we're fighting over what we call ourselves as opposed to fighting the deal that we have to deal with. So that I think as long as you know I'm talking to you, that's all I care about. I don't care what you call yourself. It doesn't make a difference to me. You say, call me a Moor, I'll call you Moor. Person next to them say, call me black, I call you black. But I think that the one term that is most collective to our people here, no matter what they are, is black. That's what I think. More so than African American, more so than Negro or colored or Moor. I think black is the one term that when I talk to the audience, everybody can identify and know who I'm talking to. But I only do that simply because it collects people together. Not because I'm actually saying black is what we should call ourselves. You call yourself whatever you want to call yourself. I'm with you, okay? No matter.
Yes, sir.
It's good? Answer the question?
Yes, sir.
Does it make sense to you?
Perfect sense.
Yeah.
Perfect. Zay, you got a
It's
question?
funny because you kind of, in a sense, answer my question a little bit, but I'm going to ask it anyway, just in case you have another aspect you want to go into it. So me and Caleb talk about this a lot, oftentimes, especially in the conscious community. It's where if you don't see it a certain way like this, then, oh, you're wrong. Or if you don't call it, basically, if you don't call yourself this, you're wrong. And it's like, it's not to say that those conversations aren't important, but it sometimes seems like we get hung up on those things to where we never, like you said, get to the real issues of what we're really dealing with here. So how important do you think that is for us as a community to focus on what we're trying to get to and what we're headed to, you know, and not so much on ideology?
Okay. Let me start by saying I don't believe there's a conscious community. I don't think that exists. That's another term that we use as a collective. It's like a gang. Okay? And all these are like little gangs that we're talking about here. A gang is not a good or bad thing. A gang is just a group of people with a specific intention in mind. So I'm not saying that a gang is bad. I'm just using the word gang as it relates to, you know, you could use what I call the term street organization. But as it relates to, you know, the concept of conscious community, the reason why I say I don't think there's a conscious community. I think there is a community of conscious people. Because I think that I have observed people in the conscious community becomes another little gang that it seems like, okay, if I talk to you, then when you're a community that is conscious, you are a group of individuals with a singular purpose. You're all heading in the same direction, but you are not attached to a particular philosophy. I'll give you an example. I did a presentation one time, and I was part of a panel, and this brother, during question and answer period, stepped up to the microphone, and the brother had a suit and tie, shirt. The brother was sharp, okay? And the brother said, I just have a question, because the conscious community, when I go to different meetings like this one, the people in the group tell me that I'm not conscious because I wear a suit. Like I'm supposed to wear dashiki and I'm supposed to wear African garb. And, everybody on the panel answered him back. And when it came to me, I said, it's funny you should say that, because one of the first things I was about to tell you, brother, is I like your suit. It don't make a difference what you wear. Consciousness is in the mind. Not to mention, of course, the tie is African. It's an upside obelisk. If you look at a tie, it's an obelisk. It
Wow.
comes down like an obelisk. A bow tie is Ma'at, the wings of Ma'at. So you can always Africanize everything. And so what I say, you know, is like we get so caught up in this house of, I know where I am. Housewives of Atlanta. You know, we get caught up in this gossip. In Spanish, it's called bonchinche. This nonsense conversation, because we're all afraid to do the right thing. We're all afraid to do what we got to do. So if we stay arguing with each other over these insignificant issues, we ain't never gonna have to get together to do what we got to do.
Actually find a solution.
Okay, so for me, my thing is, whenever somebody acts inappropriate, I know you're not conscious. Because if you was conscious, you wouldn't act like that. That's how I feel. That's my own personal feelings. How much that is attached, how much that is true, again, that's just my opinion. I think we got to get up off each other. And we've got to join hands and do what we got to do and show our young people what it is that has to be done. Okay? They've had us fighting for a long time. They had Booker T. Washington up against W.E.B. Du Bois. They had W.E.B. Du Bois up against Marcus Garvey. They had Malcolm X up against Martin Luther King. And everybody was going in the same direction. Some of us were walking and some of us were running. But we were all going in the same direction. They have us fighting each other because all of them were correct. Du Bois was correct in what he was doing, in what he was saying. Booker T. Washington was correct in what he was doing. Marcus Garvey was correct in what he was doing. Malcolm and Martin were doing the same exact thing, but two different ways, although I think that Malcolm was a little bit more correct than Martin Luther King. Because Malcolm X was after human rights, and Martin Luther King was after civil rights. You can see what's happening to the civil rights today, right? Voting, civil rights, DEI, okay? If human rights had been passed first, you would not have been able to do laws against those human beings, because by the nature of being a human being, you have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which is in the Constitution that they wrote, that they copied off of indigenous people anyway. But the idea is the fact that when you look at this, we're all going in the same direction, but they have us fighting each other. And even in certain ways, our brother Malcolm even admitted that he may have been a little bit too harsh in the beginning of his life in coming out against and calling them things like Reverend Chicken Wings and you know, different names, okay, where he did certain things. But you know what I say to us as a people, and I know this is very important to me, is Dr. John Henrik Clarke. I really idolize Dr. Clarke as an intellectual father. And Shawshie McIntyre was my intellectual mother. Dr. Clarke sensed how I felt about him. And he told me, he said, listen, don't put me on a pedestal. Because the moment you put me on a pedestal, the higher you put me, the further I'm going to fall when you find out I'm a human being.
Wow.
He felt that that was one of the challenges that Malcolm had towards the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Yeah.
Because he felt that if Malcolm could have somehow worked that out, you know, that human thing, to look at Elijah Muhammad as a human being with frailties, who is capable of human mistakes, that could have worked it out a bit. But see, Malcolm was so rigid. And again, he loved Elijah Muhammad so much. It was like, you know, I think of my son and myself, that if ever I should do something that really turned him against me, how I would feel looking at him and him looking at me, knowing that that love and compassion you had for me one day, it ain't there no more. It would hurt me, okay? And that human thing is what they all got in between them and pulled them apart, you know? And so when we analyze those that came before us, we have to look at them for what they really did. Admire, take the best and leave the rest is what I'm saying. Take the best and leave the rest, because when you get caught up in idolizing somebody, you make it so that you don't perceive they can make mistakes. And every human being can make a mistake. Give them space to make a mistake. I tell people, I got history. Okay, I ain't writing my autobiography until I don't care what people think about me. Okay, there's just things that's gonna have to wait until that time. So that as we move forward and as we understand family, conscious community, don't hold anybody up beyond who they are as human beings. They're human beings, and they're capable of errors. Marcus Garvey, Noble Drew Ali.
Yeah.
There's some stories about Noble Drew Ali that could be told. He made errors. He was a human being. But if it wasn't for Noble Drew Ali, we wouldn't have had Elijah Muhammad, and we wouldn't have had Malcolm X. If it wasn't for Elijah Muhammad, we wouldn't have Malcolm X. If we didn't have Booker T. Washington, we wouldn't have had Marcus Garvey, who came to America to learn how to create a Tuskegee Institute in Jamaica. And then Marcus Garvey impacted Noble Drew Ali, impacted Elijah Muhammad, impacted Malcolm's father, impacted Malcolm. Take the best and leave the rest. You know? Yeah, you know, everybody getting caught up with Malcolm X and all the stories that they have about Malcolm X, but nothing you would find out about Malcolm X would change not one thing that he did. So why get into that where you would then say, okay, I don't like him no more because I found this out about him. Who cares?
That was excellent. Father, Mr. Allen, he just bought 3 books from you, and
okay.
he has to leave for work, but he just asked if you could sign these books for him. That's not a problem.
Okay. Well, I can keep answering questions.
Okay.
People
Hey,
got-
we can multitask, huh? No, you good. You have a question in the back, brother? All right.
So as far as the black people and the different identities that we choose, what is the best way for us to unify? And as far as us having different identities, I kind of look at us as the Avengers. Each Avengers had different powers and whatnot, but for us, I think we got to figure out how to use our group, our individual powers in order for us to unify. But as an elder, what is the best way for us to unify?
You know, I think what you said, brother, is so very important because in the story, we should not see ourselves as revengers. I don't want revenge for what happened.
Avengers.
No, I know, because I'm gonna get that. That's why it's so important. We are avengers, not revengers. When you revenge, your focus is on those that transgressed against you. When you avenge, your focus is on those who you wish to sit on the throne as they sat on the throne before they were dethroned by those who went after them. We are avengers. There's no doubt. That's why I say I like what you said, because we are avengers, not revengers. Family, we were on our way. In Carbon Before Melanin, I have a chapter on the Magi. I used the chapter on the Magi to talk about who we were as a people and what melanin helped us be able to achieve moving forward. Okay? And Avengers are super sapiens. You know, for those of you who follow Dragon Ball Z, you've got Super Saiyans. Well, super sapiens is who we are, living in a superficial sapien world. And so we were heading towards really higher places many years ago. We were breaking through the Homo sapiens sapien line of humans, going into super sapiens. We were developing relationships between the spiritual world and the scientific world that had never been touched before. At that time, 525 BC, we were invaded by the Persians, Cambyses. And in so doing, they took away our impetus. We moved back down south into inner Africa, and we continued developing ourselves. However, the Indo-Europeans began the process, because after the Indo-Europeans came the Greeks, after the Greeks came the Romans, and then the Dark Ages, and then the Moors, and then from the Moors came the situation we find ourselves in today. Okay? We were heading someplace, 525 BC. We were heading to higher levels of consciousness. If we try to revenge our people, we will be in trouble. We have to avenge them. Because once we get back to where we should be, we will then be able to do things that will allow us to return back to where we were before we were so rudely interrupted by them. They're not important. They will never rise again. They had a certain time to live, and they're going to die out. We now have to move forward on a whole nother level and pick up where they left off. And to do that, we have to have the knowledge and the wisdom to do it. And the only way that we can do it is to realize what you just said. Just realize it. See, this isn't difficult, family. This is not difficult at all to do what we got to do. This is not difficult at all. We perceive it to be difficult because of the world that we're living in. But in reality, it's not difficult to do this. Yes.
He's got to go to work.
Yes. I gotta go to work. Oh, I won't mess with brother. Well, brother could go to work. Okay. Oh, man. So to answer your question, brother, this thing that we're doing is not that difficult, and it's unfortunate sometimes that we put ourselves into this position where living in the world we're living in, we think it's difficult. That the answers are right here for us. You already got all the answers. All you got to do is do it. And then we'll be able to move to another level of understanding. But we already have it. And the other day, like I said, was a very important day because the sun rose, it was born, it died, and then it resurrected itself all in one day. I don't know because I didn't really hear too much, but I heard nature went buck wild because nature wasn't expecting that darkness to come over so quickly. And so we're living in very interesting times right now. And it's the times that we have to move forward together and realize it's not that difficult. See, this is the key, is that we were born with everything that we need. We were born with everything that we need. Our ancient civilizations taught us this. You have everything that you need. You were born with it, and you had it so that it could unfold as you lived your life, and that the people that would be most important to assisting you in unfolding your destiny would be there. We are now living in a world that is so anti that concept. We're living in a world where people believe that knowledge is difficult, that if I'm having fun, it must be bad, because that's the Western mindset. We were not put on this planet to go through this, family. We were meant to have all the basics. Of course, there are people that have more of a little bit of an ambition. There are some people that aspire harder than other people. That's just personality. But the reality of it is that we got this. You were born with it. Now we have to worry about putting food on our table and clothes on our back and paying rent. In Africa, we ain't paid no rent. There was no such thing as rent. There was no word for rent. There was no word for a child's orphanage. There was no word for a senior citizen home. Those things didn't exist. Think of being able to know that you're going to eat. You'll have whatever clothing you need. You'll be able to do all the things that you need to do because the society that you lived in needed your time. Do you know how many trillions of dollars the Western world lost simply because they wanted to enslave black people? Do you know how much it cost them for that? But they didn't care because all they wanted to do was control and contain people. They were willing to give up trillions. And I'm talking, in fact, I don't even know if you could put an illion on it, of how much money was lost when they chose to enslave people. What it cost to steal us and to bring us here, and for us to fight back, and for us to try to poison them and kill them, and for them to create a civilization of they did, and it's falling apart. They lost trillions of dollars. They were willing to lose it in order to enslave us. And that concept is the anchor that's drawing them down into an extinction protocol. They are on the road to extinction, and they're doing it themselves. That's what I can't get over. It's what we call auto-suicide. This is what they're doing. And you have to ask yourself, what manner of human being would willingly do something like this? You must be berserk to do something like this. And so when we decide that we want to once and for all go back to where we are, trust me, brother, all you're going to have to do is do it. It's not going to be a special thing that you do. It's not going to be a special road that you have to take. No one person has the answer for you. It's going to be a collective answer that you're going to see as time goes on, and one thing will lead to another. And this is just how I feel, because I come from a natural perspective. I come from nature, and I know that nature loves us and wants us to achieve. Nature wants us to be successful. Nature doesn't want us to fail. And in this system, failure is money. When a child can't read, according to them, they put money into that program. When a child is doing well, you ain't getting no money. So it is to their advantage to keep children not being able to read. It is to their advantage, and I know it's to their advantage to put children in summer school, because when they go to summer school, the teacher has a job where he or she can go on vacation the last 2 weeks of the summer, because they taught summer school. There is money in failure. Their system is based on failure, not success. And so it's one of those, you take 3 steps, but you get pulled back 2. You take another 3, you get back 2. That's why Richard Pryor, when he told us, he said black people have to stay 3 steps ahead, because the white man always trying to push them 2 back. That way you stay 1 ahead all the time. That's how we have to think. Isn't that something? Now you shouldn't have to think like that. You should be thinking that the society is pushing you 4 steps ahead. But it's an antagonistic relationship. In Africa, when they tested you, it wasn't important what you got right. It's what you got wrong. When they gave you a test, from my study of the African tradition, it wasn't what you got right that was important. So in our schools today, if you take a test, 10 questions, if you get 10 right, your paper go on top. If you get 9 right, 9 go underneath, 8 go underneath. If you fail the test, your paper ain't even there on the board, therefore you're a non-person. In Africa, if you took a test and you got 8 right and 2 wrong, the 8 right wasn't important. It was the 2 wrong that was important, because then you studied what you didn't get right, so next time you took the test, you got 10 right. See, the way in which they created the philosophy of education, there was no failures, because they knew everybody could learn. It was just a matter of what they had to do to get you to learn. This system is based on an edu-business of failure. They created an entire special ed class to make money. And the pharmaceuticals, forget it. Ritalin. I had a student this is when I taught middle school. And he would always get kicked out of class. And my thing was always to get the students that were kicked out of class, because, gangs are formed in the hallways of middle school. Because when you get kicked out of class and you're in 101, the student that got kicked out of 102 is in the hallway too. 101 and 102 come together. And then when they go to high school, they're probably going to go to their zone school. And then by 16, they're ready to get out. And then that's when things start happening. So I used to always make sure that the students would come in to the class. And this brother would come in. And there were times that he would come and I could hear him banging on the walls as he was coming down the hallway. Teachers would be yelling at him, because when he got to one of the doors, he would bang on the door too. So he banged on the walls, banged on the door. And then I would open the door, and then he would come in and he would flip the chair over, flip the table over. And I say, yo, you have to fix that. But he would come and he would take the chair and he would face it right in front of my desk. And he would start shaking, and he'd start to, tears would be coming from his eyes. The nurse was absent. He couldn't get Ritalin that day. That's why he was acting like that, because he was withdrawing from not being able to get his dose. And I knew that. But he would shake, and tears would come to his eyes, and he like foment. And I'd watch, and I'd do my work, and I'd look up to him. And, we would have a conversation. Something pissed him off. And, he would start talking about what was going on. But I watched pharmaceuticals make millions of dollars on our children. And the thing about special ed is, when I first started teaching, there was no special ed class as we know it today. It became a public law the year that I started teaching in 79. And 79 was the year that the special ed class became a public law. And 79 was the year that the special ed class became a public law. And 79 was the year that the special ed class became a public law. And 79 was the year that the special ed class became a public law. And 79 was the year that the special ed class became a public law. And 79 was the year that the special ed class became a public law. And 79 was the year that the special ed class became a public law. And 79 was the year that the special ed class became a public law. And 79 was the year that the special ed class became a public law. And 79 was the year that the special ed class became a public law. And 79 was the year that the special ed class became a public law. And 79 was the year that the special ed class became a public law. And 79 was the year that the special ed class became a public law. And 79 was the year that the special ed class became a public law. And 79 was the year that the special ed class became a And we used to have to go to classes in order to start the special ed classes. And what I noticed is that special ed classes were formed by all the brothers and sisters that started all the trouble in the classroom. There was no real psychological decision as to why that child needed to be there. And there was more emotional intelligence special ed than there was physical challenges. Okay, there, you know, you have a learning disabled and you have emotional instability, which is sometimes the ones that act out, fighting, things like that. And then you have the physical. And then with bilingual, you have various. By the time I left the system, there was 12 different types of special ed classes that you could be in, from Biz 1 to Biz 12. Biz meaning bilingual special ed. And then you had the regular, what would be considered to be English-speaking general ed, where they would have 12 different categories. And according to which category you was in was the strength of the drug they gave you. And now you can see why the next step between graduating from high school would be to go to Rikers Island. Because they was drugged out. And then they start drugging you in prison. And they make money. Pharmaceuticals making a lot of money. And so I watched that happen to us as a people. And I used to always ask, let me speak to them first before you commit them to special ed. Let me talk to them, let me see. And so they used to send me children from various areas that were in special ed because of my own background, being a selective mute and, you know, just going through the trauma of being laughed at in school. You know, I know that feeling. You know, when I hear about the bullies and I hear about the people, I know that feeling as a child. As an adult, I can handle it because I know that if you're making in front of me, the more you make in front of my shortcomings, the more shortcomings you have. Because if you was really all that, you wouldn't have to make fun of me to feel good about yourself. As you become but as a child, you don't know that. You think there's something wrong with you. This is why I always taught our children that in certain cases where this would come up, white people don't hate you. They fear you. Because psychologically, when somebody hates you, the question in your mind is, why do they hate me? What did I do that they hate me? So you become the object of the problem. But when they fear you, then you say, who am I that they would fear me? So you push the real challenge on them to try to figure out why you feel this way about me. Why am I all that? You know, that you would fear me. Why are you insecure? And that's one of the things I used to work on. My teachers used to get very upset with me. The last 7 years of my career in education, they did everything they could to come after me so I wouldn't get my retirement money. I said, you ain't gonna do nothing to me. But be that as it may, I was director of multicultural education. And they wanted, and see what they would do with black vendors compared to other vendors is that they would encourage white vendors, they would encourage black vendors to get a vendor number. Okay, a vendor number is what allows you to do business with a school or a school system, but they could spend no more than $250 with you a month, which meant if they bought from you for 10 months, they basically, you could make $2,500. For a lot of the black and Hispanic vendors, that, you know, okay. But I taught black vendors how to get a contract number. Because a contract number is when you can spend $25,000 with a vendor. But you needed a letter from an authorized person from the district office, which I was, to write a letter to talk about why you needed their particular product, which I did for many of the black vendors. When I wrote that letter, it allowed other districts, we had 30 districts in the city of New York, it allowed other districts to be able to buy the same way. And black vendors made thousands of dollars. That's why I say I'm not gonna write my story till I'm too old, but I'm letting a little bit out right now. They searched for who are all these black vendors coming into the system? Because you see, you're dealing with people money. And when you're dealing with people, money, they after you. So they figured out, they traced back my letter. They also traced back the date of my letter. And the date of my letter preceded all the other letters, so they knew who the troublemaker was. Making good trouble, okay, as my brother John Lewis would say. They hounded me the last 7 years of my career. Because, and the one thing about them, let me tell you something, they will go down fighting. Don't ever think, if they retreat, see, they don't retreat, they regroup. And so when you think, they'll make you think, okay, I'm gonna leave you alone now, everything is all right. And then you get caught off guard because they're gonna circle you around and come back at you. The one thing I knew about them, I would never rest. For the 7 years that I worked, every year that I taught a different subject. They took me out of administration and they put me right into the classroom. They thought they could handle that because when you're an administrator, a lot of administrators do not want to go back into the classroom. But they didn't know how much I loved the students. So they said, okay, here's what we do. We got a deal for you. You'll either do this, which would be to do to help teachers learn how to teach reading, okay? Because I had a certificate in reading instruction. So they said, well, you can do this, or we're gonna put you back in the classroom. And so most people would have taken that reading assignment because they wouldn't have to go back into the classroom. So I said, okay, I'll call you tomorrow by 3. They said, no, we want to know now. This is not something to tomorrow at 3. I said, okay, I'll go back to the classroom. You should have seen their faces. Because they honestly thought they had me. They honestly thought that they could hurt me. They didn't understand how much I loved the children and how I didn't mind going back into the classroom. I did not mind going back into the classroom to be with the children. And to go back to the classroom means that you got to teach, and then you've got to develop tests every week for the children, and you have open school night with the parents. You got to go right back into all the things that teachers do. But that was a blessing, because a lot of what I do today comes out of doing that. Because when I talk to teachers, teachers know that I'm talking to you teacher to teacher, not like some highfalutin PhD graduate student that is theorizing what to do. I'm real with them. I know you in the classroom. So when I develop my curriculums ain't 300 pages. My curriculum is about 16 pages. That's all you got to know. And so it was a blessing. I didn't realize it then, but I realize it now. But it was the love of my students that I can see the ancestors working through this process, that they say, you'll see how much you're going to appreciate what's about to happen to you. But don't stay as an administrator. Just go ahead back into the classroom and stay with the children for the next 7 years, because then you can retire. And that's what I did. When I did that they could never get to me because they'd have to come to the school to get me. They could control me as long as I was on that level of an administrator. When I got into the classroom and into another school, they couldn't touch me. That's how I ended my career. The ancestors blessed me. In so many different ways, they blessed me that I look back now and I know that was a blessing that was in disguise. That's another thing I would like to tell people. I'd like to tell the younger generation. What may appear to you to be a curse today, in time you'll see it really is a blessing. There's a lot of things that happen as you're growing that you think is a curse. You say, why me? Why do I have to go through this? But you don't realize that when all is said and done, whatever has happened to you is going to move you in a direction that you would not have gone had that not happened. You do things, and pretty soon you get sevenfold what you hope to get in the long run. But you would have to have been interrupted by what you hope to get in order to get you where you never dreamed you get. And so that's another thing that happens as we move through this process in life. And this is what happened to African people. It's just interesting how life happens. But just know it's going to be all right. That's how I've always felt. It's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. No matter how things work out, it's going to be all right. It's just that you got to go through certain things to get to where you got to go.
Everybody's good?
My brother, did you have a question? I thought I saw my brother's hand up before. Yes, brother. I thought I saw your hand up. It's all good. Please.
I just wanted to ask, are only the books available for purchase, or can we get the curriculum too?
I have books that are, but the curriculums I'm updating and I'm making them better now. By the I would say that by the end of June, everything will be updated. It'll be on my site. So please, if you get my card, you go to my Instagram page, and also on Instagram I do different things that I'll keep you updated according to my work. Okay, but the books that I have are available. But there's some things I want to add to the study guide and to the curriculum itself, make it better than what it is right now. Okay.
Anybody else is solid?
Simple question. And I was trying looking on YouTube before, but like you talk about like there's like one phrase like misfit when things are going right and like isfit when things
Oh, okay.
I can't remember what they are.
Ma'at is the righteous path.
Mm-hmm.
It is the path of truth, justice, harmony, balance, order, arrangement, and reciprocity. When you're not on Ma'at, you're on Ishfet. And it's pronounced Aishfet, Ishfet. Ishfet is the road that you're on when you're not on Ma'at. It doesn't have to be the wrong road. It doesn't have to be the opposite of, like, our ancestors didn't really think in terms, well, I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say in my interpretation, they didn't think in terms of good and bad. They thought of good and what existed when it wasn't good. Because there are times that even you have construct and you have destruct. There are times that you must be in destruct in order to construct. So there are times that you should have destruction. So that the idea of Ishfet, some of the greatest lessons we learn in life sometimes is when we're on the wrong path. Because how do you know the right path if you don't know the wrong path? Exactly. And then you're so that Ishfet is a road, but once you realize you're on Ishfet, you should try to get back to Ma'at. But it is Ishfet that allows you to understand that difference and to be able to make that move. So Ishfet is not necessarily the wrong road or the bad road. It's the road you're on when you're not on the righteous road. So sometimes it's good to be on Ishfet. Some of the greatest lessons you learn is when you're on the wrong path. And then you get on the right path.
Hey, one more time for Dr. Kaba then.
Okay. And can I tell you one more thing? I may have said it. I say it so many times. I don't know if I said it. The most precious thing you have is time.
Right.
Keep that in mind. Time. Don't waste it. Pay attention. Because as you mature, one of the saddest things that I could have heard is when an elder tells me, I wasted my time. I wish I did something else. That's very sad. In fact, that's one of the saddest things that lead to the two saddest words in the English language. Too late. Too late. There are times that you have opportunities that you let it go by. Procrastination. Maybe you don't feel like getting through it. Maybe you don't feel like doing it at that time. But that could have been a turning point in your life. That could have taken you onto a road that would have really brought some great things. And I've known people that have said, I wish I had done something else. I had the opportunity to do it, and I didn't do it. Could be a lot of different choices that you make. It just doesn't have to be jobs or anything like that. It's just in general. Value the time that you have. And that is why I thank you for coming out this evening. You know, because your time is valuable. On a Wednesday, April 10, your time is very valuable. And I honor that time. And this is why I put in all the time I can with you. Because if you're willing to spend time with me and give me your most precious gift, I'm willing to give you my most precious gift, which is time. And I just thank my brother Caleb and Sister Sid and all those involved, all of the camera people, everybody that's been involved in this process and what you continue to do. I honor you for all that you're growing and doing. 3 Milli Productions, I'm just so proud of what you're doing. Just keep on keeping on, because it ain't over till we win.
We love you greatly.
I appreciate you, love you, no doubt.
Love you guys as well.
All power to the people.
Yes.
All power to the people.
Yes. Mix, mingle, talk to each other. Enjoy yourselves. I appreciate you guys. Love.